Chapter 1748. Outside the canyon. Qin Yu suddenly took a step forward. He glared at 327, his heart filled with raging waves. Impossible! He cried out involuntarily. It wasn't because there was an accident with the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. Rather, when 327 helped him obtain the great Tao, he suddenly felt an extremely intimate connection between them. His bloodline was boiling. This was a reaction that would only occur when one met someone of the same bloodline. Within Skyfall Mountain, Qin Yu was the true heavens of this world. Everything was within his perception. He looked at 327. Her eyebrows, the corners of her mouth, the ends of her hair, her aura, everything was clearly telling him. This woman was related to him by blood. As for his relationship with that clan, Qin Yu had once made a judgment. He shared the same bloodline with them. But now, Qin Yu discovered that the truth was far more complicated than he had imagined. 327, just who was she? This was the first time Niu Daodu had seen Qin Yu reveal such emotions. She hurriedly asked, "Zhou, what happened? Was the great Tao really stolen by this woman?" Seeing Qin Yu remain silent, she took a deep breath. "Don't be afraid. I have the old ancestor's golden armor of the great Tao. Even if she obtains the great Tao, she cannot harm you." Li Ruhua frowned, her eyes icy cold. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have acted in the first place. To put it crudely, she had to put on an act when it was time to act. Now that she had become an idiot, what was the use of being incompetent and angry? Baiji frowned. She didn't speak. She stood up and tensed her body, prepared to fight with her life on the line. She glared daggers at 327. The great Tao was the madam's goal, so no one could take it away. So what if she obtained the great Tao? The current 327 wasn't a true sovereign yet, so there was still a chance. Kill her and take back the great Tao. Qin Yu's mind was in a mess. It took him a long time to regain his composure. He glanced at Niu Daodu and slowly said, "I'm fine." But these words weren't convincing at all. He couldn't conceal his absent-minded expression. At this time, the cultivators in the canyon had already met with great misfortune. After the enraged 327 grasped the great Tao, it unhesitatingly released its ultimate move. The might of the true Emperor Great Tao was enough to unleash a power that no one below the Emperor realm would be able to withstand, even if it hadn't been fully refined yet. Screams rang out incessantly as the cultivators were killed on the spot. "Don't kill me. 327, I am a disciple of the Sky-Reaching sect. If you kill me, the old ancestor will not forgive you. I am a direct descendant of the Su family, one of the 4 families. As long as you spare my life, I will definitely repay you generously in the future." Unfortunately, these words were useless. 327 showed no mercy, killing people like slaughtering chickens and ducks. Everyone was in despair. They could feel the determination and cold, killing intent of the 327. She really wanted to kill everyone here. "You guys stay here." Qin Yu took a deep breath. He stepped forwards and instantly appeared in the canyon, directly facing the 327. She frowned and looked at Qin Yu, a look of surprise in her eyes. After a slight hesitation, 327 did not make a move. Instead, he ordered coldly, "Back down." Qin Yu was sure that 327 also had the same feeling as him. It was just that it wasn't as clear as his. Although he didn't know who she was, in this vast and lonely world, the feeling of suddenly meeting a blood relative caused Qin Yu to instinctively feel a trace of warmth and excitement. He suddenly rejoiced that he hadn't killed 327 during the struggle for the ruler's inheritance in the past. Otherwise, it would have been a lifetime of pain and regret. He really didn't know what attitude he should have or what status he should have when facing this 327. So, Qin Yu could only maintain his calm as much as possible. "You are very tired. Take a rest." 327 frowned. But at this time, her complexion changed. In the next moment, exhaustion flooded her like a tide, drowning her mind. She tottered on the verge of collapse. She could only desperately keep her eyes open to prevent herself from falling asleep. "You just who are you?" Yu said, I don't know either, but perhaps I can find some answers from you. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. Take a rest. Those who had been killed and cried out for their mothers and fathers, those who had fallen into despair, discovered 327's condition. Their eyes brightened. They had been rescued from the brink of death. There's a problem with this little girl. She can't grasp the great Tao. Attack, kill her, and take revenge for our fallen comrades. Now is the time. No matter what time it was, this was a necessary slogan. But this time, those who had been filled with wild joy and felt as if the great Tao was within reach had misjudged something. They hadn't been able to clearly hear the conversation between Yu and 327. Otherwise, he would have to reconsider whether or not he should charge forward so quickly. Bang! There was a loud explosion. It was like an invisible mountain had fallen down from the highest heavens, crashing down. Those who had rushed forwards the fastest and shouted the loudest, wanting to kill 327 to take revenge for their comrades, were instantly turned into meat paste. They couldn't be any more dead than they were. The canyon fell into a deathly stillness. There was only a terrifying strength that poured into the earth. The ground caved in, forming a bottomless abyss. Cold sweat instantly covered their foreheads. None of them dared to move. Yu calmly said, Everyone, preserving your lives is already a great fortune. Don't ask for anything more. What do you think? No one knew what had happened just now. Without any warning, the mountain had suddenly collapsed. Hearing these words, everyone's hearts shook and their faces paled. Go, let's leave this place first. We can't stay here for long. Whoosh, whoosh. Many people turned and fled. But there were still some who didn't give up. They stayed where they were, their faces cloudy and uncertain. Jinhua was one of them. This time, he had luckily been forgiven by the old ancestor. It was only then that he had the chance to enter Skyfall Mountain and obtain a limitless future. Now, the great Tao was within reach. There was clearly a problem with 327, so he wasn't willing to leave like this. His eyes swept over the people who stayed behind. Jinhua gripped his sword. Yu waited for a moment. Those who needed to leave had already left, and the majority remained. Now, there were less than 100 cultivators left in the canyon. This was seeking riches and honor in danger. They were prepared to take a gamble. Everyone had their own ambitions, and they all had the right to choose. Since they weren't willing to leave, then they would stay behind. Yu reached out a hand and caught hold of 327 who finally couldn't hold on any longer. He lifted his other hand and clenched his fist. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Within the canyon, space instantly collapsed, wildly twisting and blocking out everyone's line of sight. Outside the canyon, everyone's complexions changed. In the next moment, Yu held on at 327 and appeared beside them. Let's go. Within the shaking, broken, and twisted canyon, space had yet to restore itself. But the fate of those cultivators who stayed behind was already unknown. Since he had already acted in front of everyone, Yu didn't plan on hiding anything. After all, everyone present could be considered his own people. With a flick of his sleeves, he led everyone away, vanishing from sight. Domain Master Mansion, a massive underground space. 23 stone statues had shattered. Now, only one remained. It was 327. He was also the one who had the highest chance of obtaining the great Tao legacy, the descendant of the patriarch. The patriarch, an elder, had dignified expressions. The air nearly froze over. Whether she succeeded or failed depended on her. If 327 was also killed, then the great Tao would be thoroughly lost. Suddenly, the patriarch's complexion changed. Without any time to speak, his figure flickered and he vanished from sight. In the next moment, the patriarch appeared outside Skyfall Mountain. His eyes widened. This was because at this time, Skyfall Mountain was falling apart. Piece by piece, with loud, rumbling sounds, they howled towards the earth. Because they were too fast, the friction with the air caused blazing heavenly fire to burn, dragging out long tails. On this day, the heavens collapsed and the mountains collapsed. Fragments fell into the world, creating a meteor shower. Within a radius of 100,000 miles, everything was affected. Countless people died or were injured. But now, the patriarch could no longer care about these things. There was only one thought in his mind. Whose hands had the great Tao fallen into? 327? Now, the patriarch was no longer so optimistic. Because just a moment ago, when they left the underground of the Domain Master Mansion, he hadn't been able to sense the aura of the great Tao from 327. This might not be the best ending, but since things had come this far, he could only accept it. The patriarch took a deep breath, suppressing the disappointment and helplessness in his heart. He prepared to welcome the appearance of the new master of the great Tao. This person had just obtained the great Tao and hadn't been able to completely refine it. If his aura was exposed, there was no way he could hide it from him. A 300-year exalted at the Emperor realm was also acceptable. At the very least, it would give that clan another 300 years of breathing space. Shwa, shwa, shwa. Space twisted continuously, and phantoms of shadows descended from the sky. The true sovereigns were all silent. The patriarch took a deep breath and said coldly, "Before entering Skyfall Mountain, everyone signed a contract with my clan. There is no way to change it. I hope that none of you will interfere. As for the matter of my clan's consecrators, I will not let it go." True Sovereign Xiongji suddenly chuckled and said indifferently, "My 13th tower still lacks a protector." Swoosh, the patriarch suddenly turned around and glared at him. "Xiongji, are you sure you want to force me to attack you?" True Sovereign Xiongji, who was dressed in a black Taoist robe and holding a white jade horsetail whisk, instantly had an icy expression. His eyes surged with ferocity. But in the end, he snorted coldly and didn't fight back. Although that clan had no roots and was destined to be destroyed, it was also because of this that they were a bunch of complete lunatics. With the 13th tower's strength, they naturally didn't fear that clan. But it would still be very troublesome. In particular, Xiongji had heard the Tower Master mention that that clan seemed to have a trace of connection with the untouchable white jade capital above the nine heavens. This was also the reason why he chose to retreat. The white jade capital, even with true sovereign Xiongji's cultivation, he felt respect from the bottom of his heart. Xiongji retreated. The people who were secretly anticipating were instantly disappointed. They suddenly felt a bit more wary of that clan. Even this lunatic Xiongji didn't dare to act out on the spot. It seemed that the rumors were true. That clan still had a trump card that they hadn't shown yet. In that case, they would have to think more about it today. The patriarch swept his gaze across the crowd and turned to look at Skyfall Mountain. Someone had come out. He frowned slightly. The person who had come out wasn't the person who had obtained the Great Tao. This was a bit strange. After obtaining the Great Tao, one would be the master of Skyfall Mountain. They could leave with a single thought and wouldn't fall behind. Could it be that the person who obtained the Great Tao was uneasy and didn't want to appear too early? As the patriarch was thinking, the expression of the cultivator who had left Skyfall Mountain changed. He turned around and fled without hesitation. Chapter 1749. Bastard, where are you going? Hurry up and come over here. A true Emperor Phantom scolded with a gloomy face, feeling embarrassed. His disciples and grand-disciples were just too timid. It's the patriarch. The fleeing cultivator immediately revealed a look of wild joy. He directly rushed over and knelt down with a plop. Disciple Wang Shan greets patriarch. Tears rolled down his face as he spoke. The patriarch of the Dao Yuan sect was so angry that he almost fainted. He kicked him to the ground. "You're a man. What are you crying for? Speak properly." The disciple, who was familiar with the patriarch's temper and pride, finally regained his composure. He cursed himself for being scared out of his wits. He quickly wiped away his tears, kowtowed, and stood up. "Speak. Who is the Grand Tao?" The surrounding gazes gathered. The little fellow had never been surrounded by so many true emperors. He was a little confused and tongue-tied. The patriarch of the Dao Yuan sect frowned. He waved his sleeve and took a few deep breaths. He quickly said, "Patriarch, It should be the 327 of that clan that obtained the Grand Tao of Mount Tianluo. What? The eyes of the clan leader, who was already disappointed, suddenly brightened. Little friend, please explain. How do you know about this? Wang Shan looked at the patriarch with an uneasy expression. The patriarch of the Dao Yuan sect sneered. If the patriarch asks, just speak the truth. I can protect you. Niu Dingtian suddenly said, That's right. Little fellow, speak boldly. Wang Shan gritted his teeth and bowed. The patriarch already knows about this. Since you want me to speak, I can only tell you the truth. Then he told the patriarch everything that had happened in the canyon and the conspiracy of that clan. Everything I said is true. Many fellow Taoists escaped alive. Seniors, if you don't believe me, you can ask them. The place fell silent again. The patriarch was both angry and happy. He was angry that the bastard of the Dao Yuan sect had revealed their conspiracy to the public, putting him in a very passive position. The eyes of the old geezers in the surroundings had turned sinister and murderous. But the good news was that 327 had lasted until the end. According to Wang Shan, he had indeed grasped the great Tao of Mount Tianluo, which was why he had been able to surround and kill everyone on his own. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to kill everyone in the canyon. Otherwise, she wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Niu Dingtian sneered. Good move, patriarch. The leader of the tribe thought for a bit and said, The Skyfall Mountain belongs to my tribe after all. This is the last time it will be open to search for the master of the Tao, so we have to make an attempt. It's best if you succeed, but there's no regret if you fail. This is human nature. He didn't admit it directly, but the meaning behind his words was clear. The reason for that was because that clan's chief knew very well that it was impossible for him to shirk responsibility now that things had reached this point. The crux of the matter was that it was the 327 that obtained the great Tao of Mount Tianluo. In other words, from now on, there would be 2 true emperors overseeing the clan. With such a lineup, so what if the conspiracy was exposed? They had achieved their goal. Among the people present, who would dare to cause trouble for that clan? This was the power of the 2 true emperors. Niu Dingtian snorted angrily. Although he looked annoyed, he was laughing coldly in his heart. He felt that it was too early for that clan to be happy, because he had already sensed the aura of the great Tao golden armor. It was very far away, so far away that it had already left the Changshan domain. The great Tao golden armor was intact, which meant that Niu Daodu wasn't injured. Only a true emperor could cross such a long distance in such a short time. In other words, Niu Daodu was with the person who had obtained the great Tao of Mount Tianluo. That clan's 327? Humph, it can't be her. Unfortunately, to avoid arousing suspicion, he couldn't leave yet. Otherwise, he would go and see if it was as he had guessed. That person had already made his move. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More and more people escaped from Mount Tianluo. The news brought by Wang Shan was further confirmed. The great Tao had indeed fallen into the hands of the 327 clan. The leader of the tribe tried his best to remain calm, but the joy in his eyes was almost unconcealable. The great Tao of the true emperor had been recovered. The change in the situation of that clan was like heaven and earth. How could he remain calm? The only thing that puzzled the leader was that 327 had yet to appear. Could it be that she was seizing the time to refine the great Tao of Mount Tianluo? Although the leader of the tribe also hoped that another true emperor would be born in the tribe as soon as possible to help him share the burden. But now is not the best time to refine the great Tao. With so many true emperors descending at the same time, no one could guarantee that no accidents would occur. There was a rush. Sun Changqing followed the crowd and escaped from Mount Tianluo. He didn't approach the true emperors. Instead, he looked into the distance with an unreadable expression. But soon, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. Life and death, riches and honor, all depended on this gamble. He had to be decisive about what he had to give up. Otherwise, he would never be able to step into the true emperor realm again in this lifetime. Sun Changqing raised his hand and quickly formed a hand seal, then flicked his sleeve. True Emperor Cheongji who had a gloomy expression and an unfriendly aura, suddenly frowned. The next moment, a bright light suddenly lit up in the depths of his eyes. Since the great Tao has been determined, I'll be leaving first. With that, he turned and left, instantly disappearing. This scene made the other true emperors frown, especially the leader of the tribe. He focused his attention on the surroundings, and his eyes became cold. If Cheongji wanted to secretly make a move against 327 and ruin her great Tao, he absolutely wouldn't hesitate to fight. But Cheongji really left and disappeared outside Mount Tianluo. No one could understand, but that was the truth, so no one paid attention to it. 327 hadn't come out yet. All of the clan chiefs' thoughts were currently focused on that. On a barren mountain in the Long Mountain region, Swoosh True Emperor Cheongji appeared out of nowhere. The person standing opposite him was Sun Chongqing. "Greetings, True Emperor Cheongji." He bowed. True Emperor Cheongji's eyes glowed as he said in a deep voice, "Qing Tian, are you sure that he has the aura of an immortal seed?" Sun Chongqing nodded heavily. "If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have dared to tell you." "Good." True Emperor Cheongji laughed, ecstasy on his face, his eyes blazing. An immortal seed. Even if it was in an imperfect state, it was still a realm that he could only dream of. And it was just right. If it really was an immortal seed in a perfect state, he wouldn't dare to act recklessly even if the other party was standing right in front of him. "Qing Tian, I promise you that as long as what I say is true, I will help you become a true emperor." Sun Chongqing hurriedly bowed. "Thank you, True Emperor Cheongji." But deep in his heart, there was a trace of regret and helplessness. An immortal seed, it was an existence that truly coexisted with the world, an existence that was eternal and undying. It wasn't like the strange, cursed existence of that tribe, but the most powerful and noble beings in the world. Only a true emperor could take a step further and transform into an immortal seed. His realm wasn't high enough. Moreover, the other party's strength and the existence of an immortal seed surpassed the limits of Sun Chongqing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told this to True Emperor Cheongji in exchange for his promise. True Emperor Cheongji was smug and impatient. "Qing Tian, where are they?" Sun Chongqing bowed. "True Emperor, I've already attached a trace of divine sense to one of them. It is enough to lock onto their position. However, the only problem is that Niu Dingtian's granddaughter, Niu Daodu, is also with this person. If True Emperor and I fight, Niu Dingtian will be alerted, and that won't be good." True Emperor Cheongji frowned. Niu Dingtian, the strength displayed by the strongest rogue cultivator, had exceeded everyone's expectations. Although True Emperor Cheongji had always been confident in his killing power, he didn't have the confidence to fight Niu Dingtian head-on. After frowning and thinking for a while, his expression relaxed. "It's fine." Before I left the 13th floor, I asked the Tower Master to give me the boundary ring, just in case. Once this treasure is used, it can directly lock onto a world and pull it into the void. Even a true emperor can't lock onto it. Sun Chongqing was overjoyed. If that's the case, nothing will go wrong. He stood up. "There's no time to lose. I will go there immediately. True Emperor, you can follow my aura and directly descend to where they are." He was worried that True Emperor Cheongji would get rid of him and snatch it himself after learning the location. After all, there was more than one true emperor in the 13th floor. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed in True Emperor Cheongji's eyes, but he still nodded. All right. In reality, he would never tell the 13th floor about this. This was because the Tower Master had been stuck at the Emperor realm for many years and couldn't take the final step to transform into a long-lived species. If the 13th floor knew about this, he would have no chance. Sun Chongqing bowed and closed his eyes in the next moment. When he opened them again, a terrified expression appeared on his face. True Emperor Cheongji, please spare my life. I will never tell anyone about this. True Emperor Cheongji raised his hand and slapped. Puffed. Sun Chongqing turned into a pile of meat paste, and his soul dissipated. This involved a long-lived species. There was no room for error in such an important matter. In this world, only the dead could keep secrets. At the peak of rippling Cloud Peak, swish! Spiritual master Qing Tian opened his eyes. The ancient pagoda tree behind him cracked, and most of its leaves withered. Sun Changqing was dead. He knew this would happen, so he wasn't surprised. Furthermore, spiritual master Qing Tian was already in no mood to care about Sun Changqing's life. He was just a disciple. How could he be qualified to compete with his own great Tao? Taking a deep breath, spiritual master Qing Tian stomped on the ground and soared into the sky. The cloud-rippling peak beneath his feet emitted a loud, rumbling sound. Then, like an incomparably massive torch, it began to burn. Flames surged into the sky. All living beings on rippling Cloud Peak were buried in the sea of fire at this moment. None of them survived. This flame was spiritual master Qing Tian's strongest and final trump card. He ignited his Tao foundation in exchange for a period of time to fill the gap in his great Tao and possess strength comparable to that of a true emperor. As for those living beings buried in the flames, they were also part of this exchange ceremony. Power, unparalleled power roared and flowed in his body. Spiritual master Qing Tian punched out, shattering the sky and charging in. At this moment, he was a true emperor. Although the central wasteland divine prefecture was vast, it could descend with a single thought. At this time, he had already locked onto the divine sense attached to his body. On the peak of a barren mountain in the Changshan domain, true sovereign Xiongji, who had been silent all this while, suddenly raised his head, his eyes glowing. Spiritual master Qing Tian made his move. He took a step forward and disappeared into thin air. Within his soul space, on the surface of the purple moon that rose in the east and set in the west, a figure of flesh and blood appeared. Its lips curved up in a cold sneer. The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had already been seized by Qin Yu. If he could completely refine it, he could indeed become a true sovereign. But in this way, his future was limited, and he could no longer break through. It was just like how Wei Han had inherited the sword Tao she had bestowed upon him. She naturally would not allow this to happen. Therefore, there was still a crucial step after seizing the Tianluo Mountain Tao. It was because of this that at Skyfall Mountain, when Qin Yu discovered the connection between him and 327, his mind had been shaken and he had fallen into a trance. This was why she had deliberately revealed a trace of her aura, allowing Sun Changqing to discover her. At that time, he had been hiding in the dark and had not made a move. Now, the plan was complete. Qin Yu, she suddenly called out. In the outside world, Qin Yu's complexion changed. He looked up into the sky. Niu Daodu, help me take care of her. Before I return, she is not allowed to go anywhere. As he spoke, he pushed 327 forward. With a flick of his sleeves, Niu Daodu and the others were sent away. In the next moment, the skies above his head shattered. Spiritual master Qing Tian was the first to step out. His aura rose up and the terrifying suppression of a true sovereign swept out in all directions. In an instant, the entire world fell into a state of collapse. Soon after, true sovereign Xiongji arrived. His eyes blazed with greed as he locked on a Qin Yu. Spiritual master Qing Tian nodded. It's him. True sovereign Xiongji lifted a hand and a golden ring flew out. It instantly grew tens of millions of times larger and surrounded this world. In the next moment, everything in this world came to a complete standstill. The shattered sky and earth maintained the same state as when it shattered. Countless fragments tumbled in the air, giving off an extremely strange feeling. Let's go. You and I will enter the void realm. As he laughed, true sovereign Xiongji took a step forward. He, spiritual master Qing Tian, and Qin Yu disappeared at the same time. A few breaths after the three of them left, the space shattered again. Niu Dingtian broke through the sky and arrived, followed by several other true sovereigns. Spiritual master Qing Tian suddenly went crazy and ignited his Tao foundation in exchange for a short period of time to reach the true sovereign realm. Now that true sovereign Xiongji had appeared, there must be some secret behind this. But obviously, they were too late. The other party's aura had disappeared and could not be sensed at all. 13th floor, boundary ring. Niu Dingtian's tone was cold. Suddenly, his expression changed into surprise. Swish! His figure disappeared and reappeared in front of Niu Daodu. Seeing Niu Dingtian's sudden appearance, Niu Daodu, who was at a loss and anxious, burst into tears. Patriarch, please save Zhou Huan. Chapter 1750. Boom! The space shattered, and the Patriarch stepped out. Sweeping his gaze across the room, his eyes landed on the unconscious 327 that Niu Daodu was carrying. His face instantly darkened. He raised his hand and clenched it. Boom! A violent power enveloped Niu Daodu, trying to snatch 327 away. She hugged it tightly, and a golden armor of the great Tao appeared around her. Before he left, he had personally handed 327 to her and told her not to go anywhere before he returned. Of course, Niu Daodu would not let go. "Old ancestor, save me," she screamed. Niu Dingtian's face darkened. He punched the Patriarch and sent him flying. "Patriarch, what are you doing?" The Patriarch's face was even uglier. He said coldly, "I should be the one asking you this. Why is my clan's disciple 327 in your hands?" His eyes were as sharp as a knife cold. "Or, Niu Dingtian, are you planning to murder my clan's disciple and rob her of the great Tao?" He stepped forward. Boom! The true sovereign's killing intent burst out, and a terrifying aura swept in all directions. Niu Dingtian frowned. He glanced at Niu Daodu, who was holding 327 in her arms. She was indeed a member of that clan. He was in the wrong. He thought for a moment. "Daodu, what's wrong with her?" Niu Daodu could tell what her old ancestor was thinking. She shook her head. "Zhou Huan gave her to me. Before he returns, I will not hand her over to anyone. Even if I die, I will not let go." Niu Dingtian felt a headache. He glanced at Niu Daodu and saw her determined face. He smiled bitterly. "My little old ancestor, calm down. I did not ask you to hand her over." A glint flashed across his eyes. "Also, who is this Zhou Huan that you mentioned? I have never heard you mention him before." Niu Daodu immediately shed tears. "Zhou Huan is the person who saved me. When I was in the Tianluo mountain, those bad guys all wanted to kill me. It's all thanks to Zhou Huan that I can live until now. Old ancestor, quickly think of a way to help him." Just now, Zhou Huan was covered by those two with a big ring. I don't know where he is now. As she spoke, more tears flowed down her face. She was really worried. The corner of Niu Dingtian's mouth twitched. He thought to himself, "Why can't you think about the reason you're making up? Do you really think I'm a fool? I've already lent you the great Tao golden armor. Unless they're blind, or they're tired of living and want to commit suicide, they won't bother you. Save you? I think you should save him." As expected of an old antique who had lived for who knew how many years and whose hair was hollowed out, he actually guessed correctly. Zhou Huan. Niu Dingtian repeated the name over and over again, keeping it in mind. The little girl's happiness and anger were revealed on her face. He could clearly see the worry and nervousness in her emotions. Where did this shameless brat come from? To actually steal my little ancestor's heart in such a short amount of time. He narrowed his eyes and looked around. Uncle Niu, who had been hiding nearby, bitterly smiled and rushed over. He bowed and said, "Greetings, old ancestor." Niu Dingtian asked, "Old Niu, what's going on?" Uncle Niu came over and whispered a few words. He knew what the old ancestor wanted to know. "It's like this. Miss has no impression of this person before. I also tried on the ferry, but I didn't find anything. But now it seems that I've been deceived. That brat is hiding very well." Niu Dingtian was expressionless. He was considering whether Zhou Huan had anything to do with that person. The conclusion was that it was very likely. This made him feel very helpless. He raised his hand and rubbed his face. He looked at Niu Daodu and squeezed out a smile. "Little ancestor, don't worry. If you want him to stay, then stay." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by an angry shout. Niu Dingtian, don't go too far. I'm not interested in the internal affairs of your Niu family. But 327 is a member of my family. Hand him over to me immediately. He had to find out what had happened. Spiritual Master Qing Tian had burned his Dao foundation, and true Sovereign Xiongji had attacked together. Obviously, they had other plans. But 327 was now unscathed. It showed that the two's target was not him. What were they doing? Did they have nothing better to do? Impossible. Would he be tormented to the point where he would directly burn his Dao foundation and throw away his life? Moreover, the boundary ring of the 13th floor could not be used easily. Every time it was used, it would consume a lot of energy. Something was wrong. There must be something wrong. Niu Dingtian turned around. Patriarch, don't be impatient. 327 is right here. I won't touch her. But the problem now is that she was handed over to us by Zhou Huan. People of the Niu family always keep their words. Since we've made a promise, we will only return the person to Zhou Huan. As for what you want to do in the future, it's up to you. I won't interfere. The patriarch suddenly took a step forward. Niu Dingtian sneered. He raised his hand, and the great path golden armor whizzed back into his body. Old Niu, take care of Miss. His aura rose. He confronted the patriarch with a cold expression. Patriarch, are you sure you want to fight me now? Rumble. The invisible aura of the two true sovereigns collided, causing a deafening roar. The patriarch's face was ashen. He wished he could eat someone alive. But it was obvious that Niu Dingtian had hit his sore spot. 327 was right here. Once a battle broke out between him and Niu Dingtian, someone might take advantage of the situation. He took a deep breath and exhaled. He said, fine, I will take a step back. I will let you take care of 327 for now. But I will say this first. If anything happens to 327 in your hands, I swear by the great Tao that I will not let it go. The coldness on Niu Dingtian's face disappeared. He smiled and nodded. No problem. I can guarantee you this. His eyes swept around. I believe that no one will sneak attack the person I want to protect. There was silence. Although everyone knew that they were afraid of Niu Dingtian's strength, they couldn't admit it directly. Otherwise, they would lose face. Of course, there was another important reason. What was the cause of today's incident? What were true Sovereign Xiongji and Spiritual Master Qing Tian doing? They found 327, but didn't do anything. And that Zhou Huan, where did he come from? They had never heard of him before. Why would Spiritual Master Xiongji and Qing Tian use the delimitation ring to bring him into the Void Realm? There were too many questions. The true sovereigns were waiting for the matter to come to an end. When the truth came to light, they would make further decisions. Niu Dingtian had grasped the thoughts of the true sovereigns. That was why he had agreed to the patriarch's condition. Otherwise, he would have protected 327 with all his strength. Ancestor. Niu Daodu ran over and shook him. Save him. Save him. Didn't you hear what I said? Niu Dingtian smiled bitterly. Ancestor, the big ring you said is the treasure of the 13th tower, the delimitation ring. Once it is used, it can freeze a world and pull into the Void Realm. Now, no one can find the location of the delimitation ring. We can only wait for them to come out. Niu Daodu screamed, her face full of sorrow. In her view, although Zhou Huan had hidden his strength and obtained the great Tao of Tianluo Mountain, how could he be a match for true Sovereign Xiongji and Spiritual Master Qing Tian? How could he come back? Thinking that Zhou Huan was going to die, she felt like her heart was being cut by a knife. Her eyes were blurred by tears. Niu Daodu didn't know why she was so sad. Don't cry, don't cry. Niu Dingtian was flustered, a wry smile on his face as he looked at Niu Daodu, who was still crying her heart out. After a moment's thought, he waved his sleeve, creating a pocket world to cover the two of them. My ancestor, don't cry. I want to ask you something. Tell me the truth. Niu Daodu sobbed. He is dying? Why are you still asking? Niu Dingtian patted his forehead. I don't think Zhou Huan will die so easily. But you have to tell me what happened. Did Zhou Huan get the great Tao of Tianluo Mountain? Niu Daodu nodded. Niu Dingtian was relieved. This time, there was basically no way to escape. This kid was most likely sent by that person. Neo Dowdu looked at him expectantly. Neo Dingtian raised his hand and rubbed his face. I can't tell you the specific reason, but Zhou Huan won't die. Don't worry. Neo Dowdu's eyes lit up. Really? You're not lying to me, are you? Neo Dingtian nodded inside his heart. It was true that a grown girl couldn't be kept at home. I've doted on you for so many years. When have you ever been so worried about me? The air was filled with jealousy. Neo Dowda blushed. Ancestor, what are you talking about? You're so powerful. How could anything happen to you? But she still smiled. Zhou Huan was fine. She still believed in the words of the old ancestor. Ancestor, when will he come out? Neo Dingtian shook his head. I don't know. A light flashed in his eyes. He didn't know what that person wanted to do. Towering heaven after burning the Taoist foundation and Xiongji were two real, true emperors. Could she suppress two true emperors in her current state? As for Zhou Huan, that brat most likely changed his skin. Others might not be able to fool the true sovereign, but that person was more than capable of doing so. Nioding Tian had already guessed what had happened in Tianluo Mountain, but he didn't think Qin Yu could do it. So what if he had the true Emperor Great Way? Although he could become a true emperor with the Great Way, it would take time to refine, absorb, and break through step by step. It couldn't be done overnight. In short, although Qin Yu had the Great Way, he was still a useless chicken in front of a true emperor. What was that person's purpose? Qin Yu also wanted to know the answer to Niu Dingtian's question, so he asked directly. Little meat, what do you want to do? Sage Blue Sky's aura couldn't be concealed from Qin Yu at all. He could tell that this was the Sun Chongqing of the past. Although true Emperor Qiongji hadn't met him before, they were on the same side since they had joined hands. It wasn't hard to determine that the problem had appeared. On Taoist Master Qingtian's body, Little Meaty had done it on purpose. With her ability, she wouldn't be tricked by true Emperor Qiongji, and it was impossible for her to warn true Emperor Qiongji before they attacked. In other words, what happened today was Little Meat's plan to attract true Emperor Qiongji and Qiongji. Little Meat's voice sounded in his mind. You're right. I attracted them here on purpose. Although the Great Way in Tianluo Mountain can reach the true Emperor realm, you can't refine it like this. You need some fuel to get rid of the impurities and only absorb the essence. Qin Yu almost fainted. Sister, my dear sister. True emperors. These are two genuine true emperors, and you call them fuel? Are you trying to burn me to ashes? Chapter 1751. Promising. Little Meaty sneered. Do you think I would harm you? Qin Yu hurriedly said. It's true. If you have any trump cards, take them out now. I can't stop the two of them. Let alone a joint attack. Even if true Sovereign Xiongji or Grandmaster Violet Sky were to send a single slap, he would only be able to die. This was the power of a true emperor. It was terrifying to the extreme and impossible to contend against. Meaty said, not yet. Qin Yu's face turned green. He still had to wait. He felt as if he were sitting on the mouth of a volcano, about to be burned to ashes by the eruption of magma at any moment. Sister, it's useless even if you call me mother, Little Meaty angrily rebuked. Qin Yu, where is your courage? I'm here, what are you afraid of? Qin Yu, I also want to not be afraid, but they were true emperors. Too. Tell me, why can't I be afraid? Shut up, don't talk anymore. Later, just take out your sword and chop with all your might. Let me tell you, true emperors are just like that. As long as they aren't a mortal species, they can be casually killed. A soft sigh suddenly resounded in his mind. If you do this, it's very easy for something to happen. This voice was the little blue lamp. Qin Yu was overjoyed. Then he calmed down. Although this fellow could be quite unreliable at times and would disappear from time to time, he was confident in himself. But comparatively speaking, it was definitely more secure than meat. Qin Yu angrily coughed. He felt a chill and quickly restrained his thoughts. Enough nonsense. Since you've descended, that means you've approved of my plan. Prepare to attack. The little blue lamp was silent. It didn't want to, but with things having come this far, did it have any other choice? She couldn't watch helplessly as Qin Yu was dragged into a ditch and drowned. In the next moment, within Qin Yu's soul space, the blue sun that rose in the east and set in the west began to shine with a brilliant light. The consciousness of the purple moon and blue sun had been sealed the moment the flesh had entered. According to what she said to Qin Yu, if this sun and moon pair wanted to truly grow, it would take a very long time. Now, he should just obediently sleep so that he wouldn't drag her down. The sun and moon shone brilliantly. Radiant light shined upon Qin Yu's soul. He could clearly see that this was the 9 heaven-span great Tao that Min Chongjing had personally forged for him. It was a magnificent sight. It was like a wide path that suddenly rose from the ground, appearing and disappearing between the clouds. It reached the heavens and connected to the gate of heaven. After that was the Emperor realm. But now, only a portion of the foundation had been lit up, while the rest of the heavenly great path was being lit up rapidly. At the same time, Qin Yu's consciousness rapidly rose with it. This was what it meant to ride the wind and soar into the highest heavens, see the vastness of the world, see the weight of the divine tool. Heaven and earth were all in front of him and under his feet. It could be reached with a single thought and with one step. This was the true Emperor realm. Qin Yu subconsciously held his breath, his face shaken. Meaty said, "Don't just stand there. Attack, chop them to death." Shwa. Qin Yu's consciousness instantly returned. He opened his eyes. Bang! The power that imprisoned him was directly shattered. True Sovereign Xiongji's eyes brightened. As he stared at Qin Yu, his eyes became increasingly hot and greedy. As I thought, you really do have a longevity seed. In the blink of an eye, the ant-like existence in front of him actually possessed strength comparable to the Emperor realm. Besides the supreme longevity seed that coexisted with the heavens and earth for eternity, no one else possessed this ability to turn the rotten into the miraculous. It was true. Venerable Sky-High's pupils shrank, revealing a look of dread. At the same time, he rejoiced that he wasn't greedy and didn't try to seize all of this for himself. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. True Sovereign, attack. Any delay may lead to unexpected changes. True Sovereign Xiongji nodded. He lifted his hand, and the boundary ring lit up. An invisible suppressive strength descended. And this was another powerful aspect of the treasure of the 13th Tower. It sealed and imprisoned this world, directly pulling it into the void realm. It was similar to constructing a small world that could suppress the true sovereign great Tao and weaken the enemy's strength. Facing Qin Yu, who had a longevity seed in his body, true Sovereign Xiongji didn't dare to be careless. He attacked with all his strength. Longevity seed, if one dared to be careless against such an existence, that was the same as seeking death. Boom! Qin Yu's shoulders sank. The shattered earth and space around him was instantly crushed to powder. True Sovereign Xiongji frowned. Qin Yu was stronger than he had imagined. But now that things had reached this step and the existence of the longevity seed was confirmed, there was no way he would stop. He absolutely wouldn't. No matter how strong he was, it was still a fake. He had been forcefully raised to this realm. Attack! True Sovereign Xiongji roared and stepped forward. He had no intention of using true Sovereign Sky-High as cannon fodder, killing the longevity seed and seizing its longevity. When he made this decision, he was already prepared to risk his life. Venerable Sky-High roared, his eyes blazing. The aura of the sun and moon. It was even stronger than what he had sensed before. It was so strong that his heart was trembling. If he could obtain it, he would be able to fill in the gaps in his great Tao and reach the Emperor realm easily. It was even possible that he could directly push him to the peak of the Emperor realm. That's right. Right now, Venerable Sky-High indeed had this inconceivable and yet incomparably strong thought. The peak of the true sovereign realm. If he could achieve this, then it wasn't impossible for him to fight for the longevity seed. If he succeeded, thump, thump, thump. His heart raced and his eyes blazed. True Sovereign Xiongji and Venerable Sky High's hearts were burning. They wanted to kill Qin Yu at all costs. But Qin Yu was faster. The moment the boundary ring exerted pressure, he had already raised his hand. The mountain and river sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed out. Boom! The sword sheared. For the first time, it released its full power without holding anything back. The sword slashed out with the momentum to split the world. It was so fast that no one could react. True Sovereign Xiongji and Venerable Sky High naturally couldn't be killed so easily. True Sovereign Xiongji and Venerable Sky High, who had just rushed out, retreated at the same time. They were old foxes who had lived for countless years and had rich combat experience. Of course, they knew what it meant to retreat temporarily. They knew how terrifying this sword was, so they obviously didn't want to take it head-on. But even though they were prepared, the two true sovereigns' expressions still changed when they actually blocked the sword. Spiritual Master Qing Tian groaned, and the qi and blood in his chest surged. An abnormal flush appeared on his face. He had been too careless. He had already blocked it, but the power of this sword was stronger than he had imagined. True Sovereign Xiongji's gaze fell on the mountain and river sword, and he smirked. Good sword. It was indeed a good sword. It had the sword in the stone and the East Sea sword as its foundation, fused with the heaven-splitting sword sex indestructible sword spirit, and was personally forged by Misty. This sword could be ranked among the top in the Central Wilderness. An Emperor Realm cultivator could use it to increase their combat strength, so he naturally coveted it. At this moment, Qin Yu didn't hesitate at all. He stepped forward and slashed out a second time. True Sovereign Xiongji and Venerable Sky High continued to dodge. Even though Venerable Sky High had suffered a small loss due to his carelessness, his expression was still gloomy, but his heart was still calm. As mentioned before, the two true sovereigns were old foxes who had been fighting for a long time, so they were able to keep their composure. One thing was that they couldn't maintain their composure for long. They had personally experienced the power of the mountain and river sword, so they naturally knew how terrifying it was. Such an explosion was a great burden even for a true sovereign realm cultivator, let alone Qin Yu, who had temporarily borrowed power. After withstanding the first 3 attacks, when Qin Yu's strength was exhausted, it would be time for them to attack. It wasn't that Qin Yu was wrong to do so. After all, it was a borrowed power, so there would definitely be a time limit. It was understandable that he wanted to get out of the situation as soon as possible when he was in danger. True Sovereign Xiongji felt that the outcome was set, and his expression became even more calm. The gloominess on Venerable Sky High's face had also disappeared. However, being chased by the mountain and river sword was really a very uncomfortable thing. Although he had to dodge it, he still had to block it, and it would more or less cause a certain amount of damage to his body. Apart from that, he would also suffer heavy losses. 1 or 2 swords weren't much, but it couldn't stop Qin Yu's speed. True Sovereign Xiongji had a deep foundation, and he had the protection of the treasures of the 13th floor. Coupled with the support of the boundary ring, he was in a good state. However, Venerable Sky High was lacking something. Although his aura was still stable, his face was slightly pale. Qin Yu was still attacking, one sword after another. It was endless. It was as if one of the 2 sides on the battlefield had attacked, and he was attacking, and he was still attacking, and still attacking. It was simply a one-sided performance, beating the opponent until they couldn't even lift their heads. True Sovereign Xiongji and Venerable Sky High were the ones being suppressed. The 2 of them were waiting for the moment Qin Yu was exhausted. Then, it would be their counterattack. But after waiting and waiting, Qin Yu was still the same Qin Yu. He was still crazily attacking without showing any signs of fatigue. How was this possible? True Sovereign Xiongji frowned, and a dignified look appeared in his eyes. There was even a trace of disbelief. Even a true sovereign couldn't attack for so long without holding back. Didn't he need to take a breather? Furthermore, how could a borrowed true Emperor Realm cultivator possibly have so much energy to squander? Venerable Sky High's face was now completely pale. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable shock and anger, as well as a trace of uncontrollable fear. True, sovereign Xiongji. He had to think of a way to change the current situation. If this continued, he would be hacked to death by Qinyu. This was truly a way to die. It was an extremely sad and despairing way of dying, especially for Venerable Sky High. Burning his Tao foundation in exchange for a short period of time would allow him to reach the true sovereign realm. The first time he fought with someone, he would be hacked to death. In particular, he had taken the initiative to join forces with true sovereign Xiongji to surround and kill Qinyu. Just thinking about it left one in despair. True sovereign Xiongji frowned. But he couldn't watch helplessly as Venerable Sky High was hacked to death by Qinyu. There was something strange about this boy's body. He needed Venerable Sky High to help him share the pressure. The strength of a long-lived species was even more terrifying than the rumors said. It could actually allow a junior to instantly suppress two true sovereigns. No, it wasn't just suppression. If this continued, he would be unable to withstand it sooner or later. Revolving wheel. With a roar, true sovereign Xiongji raised his hand and grasped forward. Rumble, rumble. Within the void realm, the silent and motionless boundary ring began to slowly revolve. And as it revolved, the small world that had fallen into silence came to life with it. The earth cracked and shattered. The skies turned to dust. The strength of chaos, binding, and restraining fell onto Qinyu's body. The strength of the mountain and river sword was immediately weakened. The treasures of the 13th floor displayed their formidable might once more. Qinyu frowned. He raised his hand and slashed out with his sword again. But compared to before, this sword had a new change. Shua, a great sun appeared above his head, its brilliant light illuminating the world. Another sword strike. Shua, a crescent moon appeared. It fell on another part of his head, pure and clear. The sun and moon gathered together, forming the heavens and earth. An invisible suppressive strength spread out from the sun and moon, cleanly removing the restraints on his body. True sovereign Xiongji's complexion changed, and at this moment, Qinyu slashed out with his sword, heading straight for Venerable Sky High. Before this, he had attacked two people with his sword. Now that he focused on one spot, its power naturally increased. Venerable Sky High needed to block this sword strike himself. True sovereign, help me. Sky High's complexion paled. He was sent flying backwards and spat out a mouthful of blood. He could clearly feel that the raging flames in the drifting cloud peak were starting to show signs of weakening. In other words, his strength would soon begin to wane. If he couldn't fill in the gap of the great Tao before the flames were extinguished, he would undoubtedly die. Not only was he unable to outlast Qinyu, but he was actually about to be hacked to death by him. Venerable Sky High was both shocked and angry. Don't worry, true sovereign Xiongji roared out loud. His body suddenly expanded and he revealed his true form, turning into a great beast. True sovereign Xiongji of the 13th floor was an ancient vicious beast. He had once subdued an ancient remnant and used it to bring disaster to the world. Afterwards, the ancient remnant was suppressed and expelled, losing its status as the ruler of the world. Xiongji was subdued by the 13th floor and became a true sovereign protector. He was already used to wearing Taoist robes and rarely revealed his true form. But today's situation was far too strange and dangerous. In addition to the temptation of a long-lived seed, it was enough for him to use his full strength. Roar! Xiongji reared his head back and roared. He displayed his supernatural talent. Space violently shook, and waves rose up, rumbling towards Qinyu. He had to first destroy the sun and moon above Qinyu's head and borrow the strength of the boundary ring to suppress him. Only then could he proceed to the next step. His imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. As the waves of space approached Qinyu, they were directly suppressed, dispersing and vanishing. Impossible. Xiongji spoke in a human language. His eyes widened in shock. Although the sun and moon gathered together to form the world, this was clearly only a phantom of the sun and moon formed from a sword breath. There was no way he would be wrong about this. It had the strength to contend with the boundary ring. After all, the sword Tao was transcendent, and in addition to the might of this immortal sword, it couldn't be underestimated. But now, what the sun and moon suppressed was his supernatural talent. With true sovereign Xiongji's boundary, this meant that the phantom of the sun and moon in front of him had the effect of a true sun and moon. A long-lived seed, it had to be a long-lived seed. But he would never have imagined that Qin Yu's current trump card was not only a perfect and flawless longevity seed that once coexisted with the heavens and earth, but also the mysterious and unfathomable little blue lamp. Even little Misty dreaded him. Before this, she was worried that the little blue lamp wouldn't agree with her decision, so she could only act first and report later, forcing it not to descend. This in itself meant that she viewed the little blue lamp as an equal existence to her. Now, the sword breath sun and moon each contain a trace of the little blue lamp and little Misty's aura, so their might was naturally formidable. Luckily, this occurred in the void realm, and there was the boundary ring blocking it. Otherwise, once it was discovered by others, it would set off massive waves. Let alone the 13th floor, even the white jade capital high above in the highest heavens would be alarmed. Qin Yu kill Xiongji first, little Misty suddenly said. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He turned and raised his sword. Above his head, the sun and moon followed. Bang! The mountain and river sword cut down. Chapter 1752. Xiongji was both shocked and angry. It wasn't just because Qin Yu had attacked him. More importantly, as its innate divine ability was broken, the sun and moon above its head directly suppressed it. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. This was unimaginable. He had the boundary ring, but not only was he unable to suppress his opponent, he was instead being suppressed. He suddenly felt a little regretful. He had been a little rash in dealing with Zhou Huan. He should have made more preparations. But now it was useless to think about all this. Boom! Xiongji was forced back. A wound appeared on his giant body, and large amounts of blood gushed out. The torn flesh wriggled as it rapidly regenerated and healed. But in the next moment, it ruptured again. More blood flowed out. His great path golden armor couldn't block this sword. After it was torn apart, there was a continuous stream of damage. This was because this sword contained power beyond the Emperor realm. Long-lived species, eternal realm. Xiongji roared in pain. His eyes turned red. Under the stimulation of anger and greed, the ferocity in his heart was completely aroused. He opened his mouth and spat out a lump of flesh. A black Taoist robe appeared out of thin air and sucked him in. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a Taoist with blank eyes. He reached out and grabbed the white jade horsetail whisk. This was the appearance that Xiongji appeared in when he transformed into a human. Xiongji was an ancient vicious beast. His body was extremely large, and because of his bloodline, it was difficult for him to cultivate into a human. A long time ago, the human cultivators fought against the ancient survivors. The battle lasted for thousands of years before a victor was decided. It was at that time that Xiongji took the opportunity to devour this Taoist. That was how he became what he was today. Very few people in the 13th tower knew about this. It was Xiongji's greatest secret. Kill him. Xiongji roared fiercely, killing intent boiling in his eyes. This Taoist cultivated a strange cultivation method. Although Xiongji had used it to transform into a human, he hadn't been able to truly refine the Taoist. The Taoist looked up. His empty eyes locked on Qin Yu. He took a step forward and disappeared. In the next moment, Qin Yu frowned and slashed out with a mountain river sword. Boom! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. A blurry shadow appeared in the air and quickly disappeared. Qin Yu retreated again and raised his sword. The shadow was sent flying again. However, there was not the slightest bit of relaxation on his face. Instead, there was a serious expression on his face. Because after 2 consecutive strikes, his opponent did not show any signs of injury. With the power of the mountain and river sword, this was very difficult to imagine. It felt like the instant he struck his opponent, all of his strength had been diverted into nothingness, completely useless. Shadow, transformation. This was the cultivation direction of the Taoists. It was a cultivation system that had long been extinct in the world. It was different from any cultivation method that existed in the world. After using it, one's body would become illusory, hovering between reality and illusion. However, one could freely switch between the two states based on one's will. The illusory form of the Taoist could block out nearly all the energy that worked on him. He was nearly undefeatable. Xiongji perked up. No matter how much power you borrowed, it was useless against the Taoist's shadow. If he couldn't unravel this point, then he would fall into a situation where his strength would be nibbled away and his energy depleted. If he dragged, he could also forcefully drag Qin Yu to death. Soul space. Little Meaty frowned and said, "This thing looks very unfamiliar." She glanced at the blue sun from the corner of her eyes. The little blue lamp was silent for a moment. Then it slowly said, "This is indeed not the cultivation system of this world. I was just saying that there were actually things in this world that we didn't recognize." Little Meaty pointed out, "It looks like you're in trouble." The little blue lamp didn't respond. It directly said, "I can deal with it." Xiongji's eyes widened. This was because just now, the illusory Taoist had been forced back once more. But this time, it was different from before. The Taoist had been severely wounded. His chest and abdomen were nearly cut in half. Although he was currently healing, it was clear that his figure had become even more illusory. This was a sign that he had consumed a great deal of strength. How was this possible? Without giving Xiongji any time to think, the mountain and river sword came slashing down. The illusory Taoist fiercely looked up, his empty eye sockets erupting with radiance. Brilliance! He opened his mouth to speak, his syllables incomparably strange. But in that instant, Qin Yu understood what he meant. "I found you, puff!" The illusory Taoist was cut in half by the sword. It tumbled about and faded away. "Ah!" Xiongji cried out in pain. A massive wound appeared on the surface of his massive body. All of his organs were exposed and blood gushed out like a fountain. He desperately tried to cover the wound with his claws and squeeze them together in an attempt to help his flesh and blood grow back. But it was useless. This was because the moment the wound appeared, all of the vitality in the nearby flesh and blood was annihilated, leaving behind a grayish-white color. And what terrified Xiongji the most was that this terrifying strength that could annihilate vitality was already spreading outwards. Once it swept through his entire body, one could imagine what the consequences would be. Could this be the strength of the eternal realm? But this was clearly an imperfect, long-lived species, so how could it be so strong? Xiongji was both shocked and angry. But soon, he discovered that wasting time thinking about these things was the same as committing suicide. He looked up and stared at Qin Yu with his giant eyes. As he looked at the mountain and river sword in his hand, he subconsciously revealed a look of fear. "Run!" This thought fiercely rushed out from the depths of his heart, like an erupting volcano. He was afraid. "Leave behind a boundary ring, and I will spare your life," Qin Yu suddenly said. If he had heard this before, Xiongji would have been furious. But now, he was actually secretly delighted. Spiritual Master Qing Tian panicked, his face full of shock and anger. "True Emperor, don't listen to this person. We can still fight if we join forces." Xiongji looked hesitant. Qin Yu raised his hand. Before the mountain and river sword fell, Xiongji roared with all his might, "I want you to swear on the great Tao that you won't go back on your word." This sword was extremely terrifying. It was so terrifying that he felt like he was really going to die. Qin Yu held the sword without moving, his face expressionless. "I won't kill you because I don't want to have a conflict with White Jade Jing. If you want to live, keep what happened today a secret. Swear on the great Tao? That doesn't exist." His attitude was extremely domineering. True Sovereign Xiongji was both furious and terrified. He really wanted to go all out, but the spreading power of annihilation was about to break through his suppression. If he didn't deal with it quickly, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Fine," Qiongji clenched his teeth, a cruel expression on his face. If you dare to lie to me, I will explode my great Tao and destroy the boundary ring to banish you to the depths of the void realm. You will fall into the sea of chaos and never return to this world. Qin Yu turned and walked towards spiritual master Qing Tian. His attitude was self-evident. You can leave now. True Emperor Qiongji. Spiritual master Qing Tian revealed a look of despair. The boundary ring trembled. A gap appeared in its lock on this place. Shua. True Emperor Qiongji vanished from sight. And the moment his figure vanished, spiritual master Qing Tian soared into the skies. But just as he flew out, he was cut down by a sword. Zhou Huan, I am also a true emperor. If you dare to kill me, I can also explode my great Tao. Qin Yu was expressionless. Do you think I will give you a chance? Spiritual master Qing Tian froze. Kacha, with a light sound, the point between his eyebrows split open. In the next moment, his entire body was split in half. Above Qin Yu's head, the sun and moon instantly revolved, sucking in their light and turning them into a sun and moon vortex. Even though spiritual master Qing Tian was cut in half, he still hadn't died. The two halves of his body tried to fuse back together, but before he could succeed, he was forcefully pulled into the sun and moon vortex. His pitiful screams stretched out. But at this moment, they came to an abrupt end. With a crackling sound, white smoke rose up from Qin Yu's palm. The mountain and river sword instantly turned red, emitting billowing waves of heat. He subconsciously let go. With a humming sound, the sword submerged into his body. A strong feeling of weakness spread out from his body and sweat soaked his robes. But right now, Qin Yu didn't have the mind to care about these things. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Shua. Qin Yu's consciousness entered his soul space. The first words he said were, "Are you sure you want to do this? Won't there be any problems?" He asked the little blue lamp. After a brief silence, the little blue lamp said, "All this time, I have hidden myself deeply. I have done my best not to leak my strength to the outside world. But there are some things that cannot be avoided. What will come will come." Little Meaty nodded. She looked at Qin Yu, her face full of pity. What a pitiful child. This really is one wave after another. The troubles on your body are increasing. Qin Yu's complexion was ugly. He didn't need Little Meaty to say anything to know that something must have happened. This was because the little blue lamp was far too fierce. Just now, his sword strike had nearly cut open true Sovereign Qiongji's stomach, frightening him so much that he threw down the boundary ring and fled. And with another sword strike, he had brutally killed spiritual master Qing Tian, who had burnt his Tao foundation and was comparable to a true sovereign. Although these two sword strikes had placed a tremendous burden on the mountain and river sword and had nearly melted it, the might behind them was heaven-shattering. Was this normal? It was clearly abnormal. With such strong methods, there had to be a reason why the little blue lamp had remained hidden all this time. Now that it had made a move, it seemed as if it could easily suppress two true sovereigns. But to Qin Yu, this wasn't necessarily a good thing. He took a deep breath and exhaled. "Speak. What is it? How many storms have I overcome? I can withstand them." Little Meaty gave him a thumbs up. "You are a man." She didn't speak further. She looked at the projection of the little blue lamp. She was already certain of its identity. Could it be because of this that she had such a different attitude towards Qin Yu? It didn't seem like it. The little blue lamp said, "I come from another world." He lifted a hand and pointed a finger. "Simply speaking, you can think of me as a part of one of the 9 suns above my head." As he spoke to her, he paused, as if he were considering how to explain things more clearly. The 9 suns are a part of order, or rather, the manifestation of order. But that doesn't mean that there are no mistakes in the rules. In the endless river of time, they need to constantly shatter and reform themselves in order to become more perfect. In normal circumstances, the shattering and reforming of the 9 suns will be completed in an extremely short period of time. Moreover, No one will notice and no accidents will occur. This is because I'm only a part of one of the suns above my head. My memories of the past are greatly lacking, so I don't know what exactly happened. I only know that an accident occurred. The fragments of the suns that should have been completely reformed scattered throughout the 9 realms, causing countless lives to struggle for them. To put it simply, the current situation is that the master of the other fragment has found me. There is a deathly silence in the soul space. After a long time, Chinyu licked his lips. Is it very strong? The little blue lamp nodded. Perhaps it thought it was too blunt, so it changed to a more tactful way of saying, "It is a little strong." How much stronger? Bigger than the heavens? Chinyu's lips curled up. He asked another key question. When will they come looking for me? The little blue lamp thought for a moment. That's hard to say. To cross worlds, I need to cross the void boundary and rush through the sea of chaos. As long as I don't use my strength, they won't be able to lock onto a clear navigation mark. I can only rely on luck. If my luck is good, it won't matter even if it takes 100 years or 1,000 years. If my luck is bad, they might directly arrive in the next moment. These words were no different from not saying anything at all. Chinyu couldn't help but rub his temples. Since you've been discovered, why were you so fierce just now? Misty coldly sneered. Stupid. It's because I've been discovered that I need to end things quickly and restrain my strength as soon as possible to avoid being locked down again. The little blue lamp nodded. I will be silent for a period of time. Unless they are about to arrive, I won't do anything again. He glanced at Misty. You arrange it. Misty nodded. Don't worry, I still have time. Because of the little blue lamp's eruption, the amount of strength he used was much less than he had imagined. I'm leaving. After glancing at Chinyu, the projection of the little blue lamp vanished from sight. You also leave. Prepare to refine the great Tao. Misty didn't give Chinyu a chance to speak. She flicked her sleeves and drove him out. Shwa. Chinyu opened his eyes, a bitter smile on his face. This was his soul space, okay? How come he, the master, was driven out by you instead? Don't waste time. Hurry up. Misty's voice was filled with impatience. Rumble, rumble. From the sun and moon vortexes above his head, rainbow-colored lights began to gush out. The fuel was about to be prepared. Chapter 1753. Chinyu, listen what I'm about to say. You must remember it. Little Misty's voice sounded out in his mind. The Emperor Realm is indeed the peak powerhouse of this world, but the heavens and earth aren't impossible to surpass. This involves the peak of the Emperor Realm. The Eternal Realm is also called a long-lived species. They are truly eternal and inextinguishable, coexisting with the heavens and earth. Chinyu bitterly smiled. He felt that with his current strength, even an Emperor Realm expert could casually slap him to death with a single slap. Speaking of these things was a bit too far ahead of his time. The Eternal Realm, a long-lived species, this was too far away. Little Misty's tone was calm. Something like life, whether you believe it or not, it exists there. There are countless cultivators in the world, and crossing the threshold of the celestial realm to reach the Emperor Realm is indeed a difficult task. The chances of success are slim. But you are different. With my help and the little blue lamp in your hands, the Emperor Realm is already destined for you. It is a threshold you can easily cross. You must set your sights far into the future. The Eternal Realm is your goal. Only by reaching the Eternal Realm can you live on. Don't forget, someone is crossing realms to search for your position. Chinyu's eyes widened. Little Misty said, your guess is correct. He lifted a hand and rubbed his face. Chinyu bitterly smiled again and again. So this was the one point the little blue lamp spoke of. It really was greater than the heavens. His previous small goal was to reach the true Emperor Realm within 30 years. Only like this would he have the strength to protect himself when the heavens and earth revealed Chinyu's identity as a barbarian sovereign. But before he could complete this small goal, an even greater problem had popped up. As expected, plans couldn't keep up with changes. These words were King reasonable. Chinyu sucked in a deep breath. What should I do? Little Misty said, it's very simple. walk the road step by step, and eat a mouthful of rice. The threshold to becoming a long-lived species is the true Emperor realm cultivation. Today is the first step. In terms of enduring pain, you are quite good. But this time is different. You must be prepared. If you can endure it, you will have the strength to fight a true emperor in the future. Rumble, rumble. Above Qin Yu's head, the sun and moon vortexes roared and a rainbow-colored light gushed out. This seven-colored light was the fuel obtained from refining Taoist violet sky. It surged over and instantly submerged Qin Yu's figure. Ah! He looked up and roared. Blue veins popped up on the surface of his skin, and his body violently shivered. At this moment, every inch of his flesh and bone was wailing in pain. Shua! The phantom of a mountain appeared above Qin Yu's head. It was the Skyfall Mountain from before. Now, its body was within the seven colors, and its surface was beginning to dissolve. This dissolution meant that a complete Emperor Realm Great Tao was being refined. At the same time, it also meant that the remains of a true emperor would be completely destroyed, and only the purest Great Tao energy would be extracted and refined. It was the same as destroying a part of the world. Rumble, a deep bang suddenly exploded above their heads, and the sky turned pitch black in the blink of an eye. Like sticky ink, it sprinkled down a terrifying pressure. Shua, Niu Dingtan, the patriarch, and the projections of the true martial emperors were startled. They suddenly raised their heads and looked above their heads. Their faces were filled with shock, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. This is the collapse of the Great Tao. A true martial emperor had fallen. The true martial emperor realm's Great Tao was connected to the heavens, and they could clearly sense that there were no true martial emperors fighting in the world. There could only be a single explanation for the phenomenon that had suddenly appeared before him. The battle in the void boundary had come to an end. One of Qiongji and spiritual master Violet Sky had fallen. Moreover, he was not simply killed, but his great Tao had been completely destroyed. Otherwise, for a true martial emperor, as long as his great Tao was intact, there was a chance that he could come back to life after a long time. Zhou Huan. Who was this person? He had fought against two true martial emperors alone, but he had killed a true martial emperor. Even the strongest of the emperor realm couldn't do that. If Niu Dingtian was only 90% sure before, he was completely sure now. Zhou Huan was Qin Yu. What had happened in front of him was deliberately set up by that person. What could attract spiritual master Violet Sky to join forces with true martial emperor Qiongji to kill Zhou Huan at the cost of burning his Tao foundation? It was natural that he was confused if he didn't know the identity of that person. But once he understood this point, everything became very simple. The temptation of the long-lived species. Niu Dingtian smiled bitterly. Fortunately, he didn't have any inappropriate thoughts about that person. Otherwise, the grass on his grave would have grown to several people's height. The long-lived species were indeed terrifying. Even though they had fallen from the perfect level, they still had trump cards that were difficult to resist. However, such a method was definitely not something that could be casually used by flesh. There had to be a limit to it. It didn't matter to spiritual master Violet Sky, but it was best not to kill Qiongji. Otherwise, it would be really troublesome if they provoked the 13th floor, especially when there was the white jade capital behind the 13th floor. Niu Dingtian smiled self-mockingly. He was worrying too much. What kind of existence was he? He knew everything in the universe. How could he not consider this? The one who had been killed should be Violet Sky. But what was his purpose? It would be difficult to calm down after such a big commotion, and it would definitely attract attention. Once the existence of that person was completely exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Rumble. Lightning exploded in the pitch-black sky like a waterfall, instantly piercing through the entire sky. Then, a rain of blood poured down, covering the world. At this moment, a strange aura suddenly appeared in the perception of the true emperors. Swish! Their eyes turned and fell on Li Ruhua. Now, her eyes were closed, her face pale, and her body trembled as if she was suffering great pain. But during this process, Li Ruhua's aura continued to rise at an astonishing rate. Others couldn't see it, but in the eyes of the true emperors, a shadow of the great Tao was emerging behind Li Ruhua. It soared into the sky and reached the towering obstacle in front of all cultivators, the celestial being gate. Now, the shadow of the great Tao had completely lit up and was accumulating power. He knocked on the door and stepped into the Emperor realm. Li Ruhua was breaking through. But today's situation was a little strange. Even the true emperors had never seen such a way of breaking through. It didn't seem like she had accumulated enough strength to break through the threshold of the celestial being realm. It was more like she had been forcefully pulled and pushed into it. Although it was hard to believe, the scene in front of them gave the true emperors such a feeling. Niu Daodu whispered, "Ancestor, what's wrong with her?" Niu Dingtian let out a breath and said in a deep voice, "She is breaking through. If nothing goes wrong, she will be a half-step emperor after today." After saying that, he paused and chuckled. This world is really unfair. Some people are stuck at this step for thousands of years until they decay, but still can't break through. But some people don't have to do anything, but they are forcefully pushed into it. It's hard not to break through. Niuding Tian was 100% sure that this matter must have something to do with that person. Apart from the long-lived species, who else could do it outside the legendary Eternal Realm? Pushing someone into the Emperor Realm was such a shocking thing that no one had ever heard of before. The clan leader looked at Niuding Tian. "Niuding Tian, you seem to know something?" Niuding Tian narrowed his eyes and said expressionlessly, "Clan leader, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want." Just now, his conversation with Niu Daodu had been concealed, so no one could sense it. But from the looks of it, the clan chief had still managed to detect some traces of it. This half-dead old thing's perceptive ability was really strong. He had always suspected that the clan leader had hidden his strength, and now he could basically confirm it. But, no matter how strong you are, and even if you were related to the White Jade Jing, so what? Being chosen as the prey by that person meant that you were destined to fall into a hopeless situation with no chance of survival. That clan was definitely finished. Niuding Tian dared to use his brain to guarantee that it was only a matter of time. The clan leader frowned and glanced at the still unconscious 327. He snorted coldly and said nothing. Up until now, he was also confused about what had happened today. He couldn't understand the situation at all. Had the Great Path really fallen into the hands of 327? Although, according to the information they had obtained, that was indeed the case. But the clan leader still felt that something was wrong. Western Wilderness. Heaven-plucking sect. Qin Yu chased away the 5 teachers who had hurried over. He told them that he was going into seclusion and that if they didn't want him to die, they should guard him and not allow anyone to come near. Then, without hesitation, he activated all the aura-isolating formations in the seclusion grounds. His face was full of shock and anger. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. Emperor Realm. Qin Yu was actually about to break through to the Emperor Realm. How was this possible? Even if he was born from the world and was called the son of heaven and earth, it was impossible for him to break through to the Emperor Realm in such a short period of time. He still had to follow the rules. Everyone had to abide by the rules. No matter how great one's background was, one had to improve and become stronger step by step. But Qin Yu, that bastard, it was as if he had cheated and reached the heavens in a single step. Once he took this step, there was basically no way for him to escape from his clutches. Boom! Terrifying energy fluctuations erupted from Qin Yu's body. He didn't have time to think more and immediately sat down cross-legged. In the next moment, the phantom of the Great Path appeared behind him. Void boundary ring. Rich rainbow-colored light covered Qin Yu. He couldn't see what was happening inside, only muffled howls. Even if it was just the sound, one could instantly feel the pain he was enduring. The 9 heaven-span tune's Great Path had completely appeared above Qin Yu's head. It was constantly being lit up at a speed visible to the naked eye. What lit it up were the motes of light released by the refined Heavenfall Mountain. This light was the essence of the Great Path. After it had been refined, all of its attributes had been erased, leaving behind only pure strength. Now, only a third of the 9 heaven-span tunes had been lit up. The rainbow-colored Skyfall Mountain was only a shadow that would soon disappear. And this was the price one had to pay to refine the Great Path and only take its essence. Meaty's tired voice sounded out in his mind. A silver spear and a wax stick, all looks, but no use. Her voice was full of disdain. In the next moment, there was a light crack and the phantom of Skyfall Mountain shattered. The surging rainbow-colored light disappeared with it. Thump! Chinyu fell to the ground, gasping for breath. He felt as if he had been rescued from a mountain of daggers and a sea of fire. Warmth gushed out from his limbs and bones, instantly sweeping through his entire body. The pain rapidly dissipated. What followed was an indescribable sense of relaxation. A formidable strength shook and surged within his body. You could clearly feel that his strength had greatly increased. But this still wasn't enough to fight the true sovereign, right? He closed his eyes and carefully sensed for a moment before opening them again. He definitely couldn't. At most, he would be able to resist 1 or 2 strikes from the true sovereign, but in the end, he would still be defeated. Meaty, Schwa. Just as he was about to speak, she appeared out of thin air. She frowned and said, "The degree of your strength's increase is a bit worse than I imagined." A bit, and then another bit. Chinyu's lips couldn't help but twitch. He thought to himself, when did you become infected by the little blue lamp? Why do you like to say such unreliable words? Meaty rolled her eyes. What are you thinking? I didn't say this was all the strength you can muster. Close your eyes and carefully sense it again. Chinyu nodded and closed his eyes. Soon, he sensed that something was different. Besides himself, there were the auras of 2 other great Daos. They came from the same source as him. It was as if he only needed a single thought to borrow their strength. No, it would be more accurate to say that he was gathering the strength that originally belonged to him from its scattered state into one. Schwa. Chinyu opened his eyes, a look of surprise on his face. The other 2 great Daos were incomparably far away from him, but in their auras, he could still sense some familiar things. One was Chinyu. After he had planted a soul in this heaven and earth spirit embryo, he had refined it into his incarnation. In truth, Chinyu could understand that Chinyu's great Daos could be used by him. After all, the 2 of them were originally one. But the master of the other great Daos was actually Li Ruhua. Chinyu stared at Meaty. He said in a low voice, "What is going on with Li Ruhua?" Meaty yawned. "If you want to know, go ask yourself." How would I know? This excuse was far too perfunctory. Chinyu didn't continue asking. He looked at Meaty in front of him, and his complexion suddenly changed. "You're leaving?" Meaty looked at him. "Sir Chin, you've really become smart now." He nodded. "That's right. I've been out for too long this time. I have to return home and sleep for some time to restore my strength. So, you have to be careful in the future. Don't mess around when you have nothing better to do. Who knows when you might kill yourself." She waved her hand, not giving Chinyu a chance to speak again. She turned and said, "I'm leaving. I hope that when I return, you will still be alive and kicking." Schwa. She vanished into thin air. In the deathly silence, the only one left was Chinyu. He looked in a daze in the direction that Meaty had left in, a piece missing from his heart. It was like a person who had lost a leg while walking. Meaty, she had left. She had left without hesitation. She hadn't even given Chinyu a chance to say goodbye. He had already expected this day, and Meaty had already warned him. But now that this matter truly occurred, Chinyu found it hard to accept. This had nothing to do with his strength or his rationality. It only concerned his heart. From now on, he would walk the great Tao alone. Li Ruhua opened her eyes. At this time, she had already crossed the gate of heaven and become a half-step sovereign. But now, there wasn't the least bit of happiness in her heart. There was a complex look in her eyes. She stood up and bowed to Niu Dingtian. Then, her eyes fell on Niu Daodu. "Tell Chinyu that he will never know the answer. She soared into the skies and left, vanishing from sight. Li Ruhua already knew everything, but she had no way to face Qinyu. She could only choose to leave. A half-step sovereign of the 13th floor, in a situation where there was no conflict of interest, no one was willing to make things difficult for her. The crowd of true emperors, including the patriarch, didn't do anything. They allowed her to leave. Niu Daodu was stunned. Her eyes widened. Old ancestor, what does Li Ruhua mean? What does she want me to tell Qinyu? Niu Dingtian sighed. He reached out and patted her head. Li Ruhua broke through to the half-step sovereign realm. She was overjoyed and her mind was momentarily confused. Just ignore her. Niu Daoda frowned. Is that so? Why do I feel something is wrong? And how did she know about Qinyu? Niu Dingtian said, maybe they knew each other before. Anyway, I'm right. Don't think too much about it. He almost couldn't make up any more stories. Previously, Niu Dingtian had thought about making Qinyu his grandson-in-law. But now, he had already given up on this idea. It would be courting death to compete with that person. He didn't want his precious granddaughter to lose her life inexplicably one day. No way. He had to find an opportunity to talk to Qinyu as soon as possible. He couldn't let Daodu sink deeper. Chapter 1754. The flames on Cloud's sweeping peak have been extinguished, the old ancestor of the Tao Essence sect suddenly said. It could be confirmed that Taoist Qin Tian was dead. He was the one who died. What about true Emperor Qiongji? Where was he now? There was also Zhou Huan. His whereabouts were unknown. Niu Daodu didn't have time to think about what happened today had to do with Qinyu. Her eyes widened. Old ancestor, did Zhou Huan win? Why hasn't he come out yet? Niu Dingtian said, he should have one. The boundary ring will return to where it left from and return the small world to this world. He looked at Niu Daodu. Let's wait a bit longer. As a matter of fact, he was quite worried, as this matter involved true Emperor Qiongji, who was backed by the 13th Tower. If this matter attracted the attention of the 13th Tower, then even if that person was strong and had incredible cards, he might not be able to stop them. After all, above the 13th Tower was White Jade Capital. If the old were beaten, an even older one would come. And above that even older one was the old ancestor. This was the reason why no one dared to provoke the cultivators of the 13th Tower. But there was nothing that could be done. This was the amazing thing about having a powerful background. In truth, true Emperor Qiongji didn't go far. He didn't tell the 13th Tower about the long-lived species. It wasn't because he still had the thought of seizing the long-lived species, but because of a simple reason. He didn't dare. Qinyu's last sword strike had nearly split open his stomach. An annihilating life force had invaded his body. After escaping from a void realm and returning to the world, true Emperor Qiongji discovered that although the destructive force could be suppressed, it was already like a maggot in his bones. It had become a huge hidden danger. Moreover, when he tried to probe it, he received a warning. This annihilating power was only temporarily dormant. In other words, if necessary, it could erupt at any time and pierce through his heart. True Emperor Qiongji was shocked and angry. His expression was uncertain. He hesitated again and again, but in the end, he didn't dare to risk it. The reason was simple. The strongest Tower Master of the 13th Tower wasn't a long-lived species. No one could save him. As for sacrificing himself to pass information about the long-lived species to the 13th Tower, sacrificing himself to fulfill the Tower Master's dream of living forever. I'm sorry, but I'm too poor to do that. Right now, he only had one thought. How could he survive? Clearly, the answer lay in Zhou Huan. Of course, Qiongji wouldn't leave. He was also waiting for Zhou Huan to come out. The Void Realm. Qinyu's spirits rose. After all, Misty was only leaving. There would come a day when they would meet again, as long as he was still alive. Therefore, surviving was the key. He took a deep breath and exhaled. Then, he looked up at the shining boundary ring above his head. With a thought, Zhang Xian realized that he could actually control it directly. It was probably Little Meat who had helped him settle this before she left. And when Qinyu touched the boundary ring, A thought fluctuation spread into his mind. It was indeed meaty. You could trust Niu Dingtian, but never trust anyone unreservedly. You could discuss the follow-up plans with him. I'm really leaving. Live well. Meaty's voice disappeared. Qin was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. Even if you left so quickly, you still remembered me in your heart. Meaty, I look forward to seeing you again. He raised his hand and gripped it. The boundary ring trembled. As his thoughts moved, it broke through the void realm and returned to the world. At the same time, as the boundary ring began its return journey, there was a response from the outside world. A small world that had been borrowed was about to return. The patriarch's eyes sharpened. He didn't know the truth, but his intuition told him that today's events involved that clan. What happened today involved that clan. He had to find out the truth. And the answer lay with Zhou Huan. Niu Dingtian swept his eyes over and subconsciously frowned. This old thing had ill intentions, but he wasn't too worried. First, with that person's help, he didn't need to fear them. Taking a step back, they still had 327 in their hands. Which clan would be willing to abandon her? The other true sovereigns were silent, but a dignified look appeared in their eyes. Hum. Within the phantoms, there were deep and cryptic fluctuations of strength, ready to erupt. Once a problem occurred and they needed to act, they could arrive at any time. Bang! Space shook. The tiny dot in front of them instantly enlarged and expanded. The vanished small world returned to the world once more. The boundary ring was taken away and it lost its suppressive strength. The strength that erupted from the small world instantly swept out in all directions. Rumble, vast and boundless. It shook the heavens and earth. But now, it wasn't able to cause any damage. With so many true sovereigns gathered together, they only needed to think to quell the impact. This was the situation. But in reality, the true sovereigns who seemed to be able to suppress everything had extremely dignified expressions. This was because the one who appeared in front of them was Qin Yu. Moreover, he was alone. There was no need to say that venerable Sky High had been killed. But true sovereign Xiongji had also disappeared. Could it be that they were all killed by him alone? No way. If this was the case, the 13th floor would have already acted. They wouldn't have remained silent until now. What was going on? Eyes fell on Qin Yu. Within their dignified expressions, there was a deep fear. This was because he was the one who had killed venerable Sky High, who had burned his Tao foundation and become comparable to a true sovereign. Although Sky High, who had burned his Tao foundation, was slightly different from a true sovereign, this was enough to show that he had the ability to threaten them. But this was enough to show that Qin Yu had the ability to threaten them. If one added in the missing Xiongji, the threat level of this junior in front of them was off the charts. No one spoke. The true sovereigns were all observing. This was because they didn't sense any strength that was too strong. Zhou Huan, Niu Daodu rushed out, her face excited. Qin Yu smiled. He had already seen 327 behind Niu Dingtian. Thank you, Miss Niu. He had said similar words many times during this time. But his words of thanks would come true one day. Niu Dingtian stepped forward and said, Zhou Huan, hand her over to my Niu family. I have kept her for you until now. Now, I will return her to you. As for the following matters, you will have to deal with them yourself. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Thank you, Senior Niu. I will remember this favor. Niu Daodu's eyes widened in dissatisfaction. Old ancestor, how can you do this? She was filled with righteous indignation. Niu Dingtian was so angry that he almost laughed. What else could he do? Now that he and Zhou Huan were as close as a family, should he continue acting? From her eyes and demeanor, he had already received the signal. Old foxes were like this. With just a little hint, they could coordinate perfectly. So, he had to act as a stranger that Zhou Huan didn't know. It would be best if there was some conflict between the two. And the point of conflict, Niu Daodu was the best choice. As for Qin Yu's safety, Niu Dingtian didn't doubt at all. Since Qin Yu had killed Daoist Qin Tian alone, it would be fine as long as he didn't look for trouble. Daodu, come back! Niu Dingtian shouted. Nyo Daodu's eyes widened in astonishment. Old Nyo, send the miss home. If she resists, tie her up. Shwa, Uncle Nyo appeared. He bitterly smiled. Old ancestor, this Nyo Ding Tian frowned. Didn't you hear what I said? Yes. Uncle Nyo turned around and bowed. Miss, let's go. Nyo Daodu shook her head. I won't go. Old ancestor, what's wrong? Nyo Ding Tian flicked his sleeves. Space twisted, and Uncle Nyo and Nyo Daodu were sent away. In his heart, he bitterly smiled. He must have offended the little ancestor. But whether it was for the sake of the plot or his own conscience, he was happy to take Nyo Daodu away from this kid. Humph! Nyo Ding Tian coldly snorted. He looked at Qin Yu indifferently. I don't know who you are, but please stay away from my granddaughter in the future. Otherwise, I won't be polite. This scene made many true sovereigns ponder. However, if they were in Nyo Ding Tian's shoes, they would also choose to do the same. Before the situation was clear, they should separate from each other to avoid being involved. Qin Yu praised in his heart. Old Nyo was good, and his acting was excellent. He frowned and looked at Nyo Ding Tian angrily. Okay, I agree. He raised his hand, and 327 fell into his hand. The clan leader suddenly took a step forward. Heaven and earth suddenly sank, as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Zhou Huan, return my clan's number 327 to me at once. Qin Yu frowned. Are you the patriarch? He hesitated, took a deep breath, and shook his head. I'm sorry. Due to some reasons, I can't give 327 to you yet. But don't worry, I won't hurt her at all. I just want to figure something out. The patriarch took a step forward. You're indeed powerful to be able to kill spiritual master Qing Tian. Let me see what you're capable of. The Zhou Huan in front of him was extremely mysterious. The patriarch had taken this step because it was impossible for him to give up 327, and also because he was gambling. He was gambling that Qin Yu wouldn't dare to attack him, otherwise all his cards would be exposed. He wasn't at the Emperor realm, but he could kill spiritual master Qing Tian and cause true sovereign Xiongji to go missing. He must have some tricks up his sleeve. Once this trick was exposed in front of everyone, it would attract covetous eyes. After all, everyone wanted good things. This was a very simple and straightforward principle. Qin Yu's expression turned ugly. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't. The situation was in a stalemate. However, this silence did not last for long. Stop! True sovereign Xiongji descended and looked at the patriarch coldly. Patriarch, I won't allow you to attack fellow Taoist Zhou Huan. He roared at the sky with an earth-shattering momentum. This was because true sovereign Xiongji was in his true form. The Taoist had disappeared after being killed, so he lost the ability to take human form. When Qin Yu faced the patriarch, he revealed an awkward expression. Xiongji knew that his chance had come. He wanted to live, and his hope of survival rested on Qin Yu. After the incident with Jiesu, the idea of using force had completely dissipated. If he didn't use force, he could only think of a way to gain Qin Yu's favor and slowly plan. Chapter 1755. Help Qin Yu overcome this crisis. Otherwise, once that patriarch attacked, the secrets of the long-lived species would be exposed. The secret of the long-lived species was about to be exposed. The consequences could be imagined. In Xiongji's eyes, the favor he was doing today could be said to be enormous. Disregarding what Xiongji was thinking, the true sovereigns present frowned as they saw him suddenly appear. The more they thought about it, the more they couldn't understand the current situation. Sage Qing Tian had clearly joined forces with true sovereign Xiongji to use the boundary ring to deal with Qin Yu. Now that Qing Tian had been killed, only Qin Yu was left. He had returned from the void boundary alone, and true sovereign Xiongji had been waiting outside for a long time. Taking a step back, even if he didn't care about these things, there was no need for true sovereign Xiongji to protect Qin Yu, right? Could something have happened in the void realm that they didn't know about? The patriarch frowned, his face gloomy. Xiongji, what is the meaning of this? He was annoyed. He felt that nothing would go smoothly today. Just as he was about to force Qin Yu back, true sovereign Xiongji suddenly jumped out and completely destroyed him. Xiongji coldly sneered. In the Void Realm, Sage Qing Tian schemed to kill me and steal my cultivation to fill my Dao gap. Luckily, fellow Taoist Zhou Huan helped me and I was able to escape. This is a life-saving grace. He looked up and swept his eyes around. Today, I will say this. If anyone wants to touch fellow Taoist Zhou Huan, they must pass through me first. Strange things happened every year, but there were many today. Did true sovereign Xiongji eat the wrong medicine, or was his brain damaged? He actually jumped out to protect Zhou Huan. The true sovereigns fell silent, all of them finding this unbelievable. Sage Qing Tian schemed to kill Xiongji? Forget it, this wasn't reliable. With Qing Tian's cultivation, even if he burned his Dao foundation, only death awaited him if he attacked true sovereign Xiongji. Moreover, when he entered the Void Realm, true sovereign still had the boundary ring of the 13th tower. He was like a tiger that had grown wings. There was definitely something fishy going on. But true sovereign Xiongji insisted on this point. Of the 3 people in the Void Realm, Qing Tian was already dead. As long as Zhou Huan didn't expose him, no one would know the truth. Only Niu Dingtian guessed that Xiongji must have been schemed against by that person. Although he escaped the Void Realm alive, he had no choice. It was not entirely correct, but that was the general meaning. The old ox once again rejoiced inwardly. He was truly reckless, actually daring to provoke that person. Oof. The fact that he was still alive was already a great stroke of luck. Qin Yu blinked his eyes. He coughed and said, "True sovereign Xiongji, I can understand that the patriarch is anxious to save someone. There is no need to make the situation too stiff." Xiongji was delighted. Fellow Taoist, Zhou Huan is right, but I will not sit idly by today. Don't worry. It was effective. The decision to leave a favorable impression on him was the right one. The patriarch's face was cloudy and uncertain. He stared at Qin Yu, his heart in a difficult position. 327 was in the enemy's hands, and even now, it had not woken up. Moreover, with Xiongji interfering, there was no way he could force Qin Yu to bow his head. Apart from that, the clan leader realized that Zhou Huan's attitude toward him was still very calm. She displayed a kind of restraint and forbearance. She did not reveal any hostile emotions because of his continuous attacks. Instead, it seemed more like a kind of helplessness. This was a little strange. It was a very simple logic. If the 2 of them were to exchange positions, he would definitely be extremely angry. What was the reason? Looking at 327 in Qin Yu's arms, a thought suddenly sprang up in his mind. Could it be that the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had fallen into Zhou Huan's hands? And this could also explain why true sovereign Xiongji and Sage Skyhigh had directly attacked Zhou Huan and ignored 327. The clan leader's heart shook. He deeply looked at Qin Yu. He took a deep breath and said, "I can take a step back for now, but you must give me an explanation." Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Thank you, Patriarch." He thought for a moment and said, "I'm willing to temporarily go to Long Mountain territory as a guest." True sovereign Xiongji said, "I will go with fellow Taoist Zhou Huan." Qin Yu said, "Thank you, true sovereign Xiongji." The clan leader nodded. "Very well." He gestured with his hand. "You too, please." "Hold on," Baiji suddenly shouted. She glared at Qin Yu. "I am with him." Qin Yu looked over and couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. This woman really didn't fear death. She actually dared to meddle in it this time. But since she had already spoken, Qin Yu couldn't refuse. Otherwise, he would be suspected. At that time, Baiji would be in danger. He calmly nodded and said, "She is one of my people." The clan leader looked over. "Very well." Schwa, space flashed, and the several people disappeared. Today's show is really interesting. I can't understand it. The one who spoke was the old ancestor of the Tao Essence sect. There must be something hidden. I always feel that Zhou Huan is hiding something deeply. Could it be an old friend that has returned from the River of Time? It is possible. The true sovereigns had thoughtful expressions. Niu Dingtian sneered. What's the use of guessing? He was here just now. So why didn't you say anything? There was an awkward silence. The old ancestor of the Tao Essence sect clenched his teeth. Old Nyo, you didn't say anything just now. How dare you laugh at us? Neo Ding Tian rolled his eyes. Let me tell you, this Zhou Huan is mysterious and unfathomable. It is best to stay away from him, lest he provokes trouble. After saying that, he cupped his fists, turned around, took a step forward, and disappeared into thin air. Although this old Nyo's words aren't pleasant to hear, he is right. The old ancestor of the Tao Essence sect pondered. He was in a hurry to separate from Zhou Huan. Could it be that he has sensed something? Everyone had seen what happened just now with their own eyes, and it matched Nyo Dingtian's current behavior. Let's wait and see. Since Zhou Huan has jumped into our sight, he won't disappear just like that, a true sovereign said. Everyone, I'll take my leave first. I'll take my leave too. Shua, shua. The true sovereigns left the place. On the surface, he appeared to be extremely calm. However, the attention he was paying to this matter did not decrease in the slightest. It was because Venerable Qing Tian was dead. Although he was a fake true sovereign, it was a fact that he could fight a true sovereign after burning his Tao foundation. If he could kill him, there was a high chance that he could kill all the true sovereigns present today. How could they not be wary of him? In this world, it had been a long time since a true sovereign had died. If they couldn't figure out what had happened, how could the true sovereigns feel at ease? In particular, it was obvious that Zhou Huan had joined forces with that clan. Don't take everyone for fools. Do you really think that no one could see the strange attitudes of both sides? The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, humph, it was hard to say just who had fallen into their hands. And in a situation where that clan had clearly been reduced to a huge cake that everyone coveted, Zhou Huan had suddenly popped out. Perhaps the situation was about to change. There was also true sovereign Xiongji. His relationship with Zhou Huan was also very strange. They couldn't help but think about it. Everlasting Mountain Region, Domain Master Mansion. Space shook and a group of figures appeared. An anxious elder had been waiting here for a long time. He hurried over. Patriarch, his voice paused, and his eyes fell on true sovereign Xiongji, deep fear in them. Why would a true sovereign of the 13th floor appear here? 327. The elder's eyes brightened. He stared at Xinyu. Who are you? Immediately hand him over. The patriarch said, Don't be rude. His eyes fell on Xinyu. Fellow Taoist Zhou Huan, what is it? You can speak now. He glanced at the shrunken Xiongji from the corner of his eyes. Xinyu took a deep breath and nodded. That's right. The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain has been obtained by me. Impossible. The elder blurted out, his face filled with anger. He had already obtained news that 327 had become the master of the great Tao. How could it have suddenly become this boy in front of him? The patriarch sighed inwardly. It really was like this. But he didn't reveal any emotion on his face. How can I prove it? Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. The phantom of Skyfall Mountain appeared above his head. Of course, all that was left was a phantom without any charm of the great Tao. This was because its essence had been swallowed up by Qin Yu. With the clan chief's eyesight, he was naturally able to tell what the silhouette before him represented. The ownership of the great Tao had already been revealed. Although he was prepared in his heart, he still couldn't help but feel a bit frustrated. All their hard work was for naught in the end. If the great Tao was in the hands of that clan, then his situation would have been completely different. But now that things had come to this, he could only accept it. The patriarch cupped his hands together and said, According to the contract, starting from today, fellow Taoist, Zhou Huan will be my clan's exalted one for 300 years. During this period of time, I ask fellow Taoist Zhou Huan to join hands with me and protect my clan from harm. Qin Yu waved his hand. Patriarch, please wait. He pondered for a moment, then slowly said, I did obtain the great Tao of Mount Tianluo, but I have no way to use it to become a true emperor. Therefore, I'm afraid the contract between me and that clan cannot be fulfilled. The patriarch frowned, his eyes icy cold. Fellow Taoist, Zhou Huan, do you plan on tearing up the contract? Let me remind you to consider this carefully. Humph. True sovereign Qiongji stepped forwards. Fellow Taoist, Zhou Huan is my savior. When it was time to appear, one had to be decisive. When it came to brushing up favorable impressions, Qiongji was also a first-rate expert. This time around, the clan chief did not back down in the slightest because of Qiongji's appearance. His face was expressionless and his tone was calm. True sovereign Qiongji knows of my clan's current situation. Are you sure you want to interfere? If this involves the inheritance of my clan and the survival of my clan, I might really go crazy. And if I go crazy, you might not want to see me go crazy. Qiongji's pupils shrank. At this moment, he could feel an intense, dangerous aura from the patriarch. It was terrifying to the extreme, like an abyss of destruction. Qin Yu promptly said, "Patriarch, please calm down. If I really wanted to tear up the contract, I wouldn't have appeared here." He looked at Qiongji. "All of you withdraw first and wait for me on the side." Qiongji relaxed. He hurriedly nodded. Yes. He turned and left. He really didn't want to risk his life against the patriarch. It would be best if he didn't. Otherwise, he might really be beaten to death by this old thing. He was definitely hiding his strength. Baiji hesitated for a moment. Then, she clenched her teeth and followed behind. She had to figure out just what had happened. This was because not too long ago, her connection with the madam had been cut off. The patriarch's eyes brightened. He raised his hand. "You also leave." The elder respectfully nodded. He looked at Qin Yu with shock and surprise. This was because just now, Qin Yu had sent true Emperor Qiongji away with just one sentence. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe. After all, that was a true emperor from the 13th Tower. He had always been known for his ruthlessness and arrogance. However, the patriarch seemed to have expected this. He was quite calm. After the elder left, the patriarch said, "Zhou Huan, what do you mean by this?" Qin Yu thought quickly. He quickly went through the plan in his mind. After making sure that he didn't miss anything, he exhaled. "My name is not Zhou Huan." The first sentence. This caused the clan leader to furrow his brows, because this was out of his expectations. With a thought, all the effects of the disguise disappeared at this moment. What appeared in front of the patriarch was a brand new face. With the crackling of his bones and flesh, his body even grew a few inches taller. Qin Yu of the heaven-splitting swordsmanship sect. The patriarch said slowly. At this moment, the air almost froze. He seemed extremely calm, but his body was like a volcano, ready to release an annihilating strength at any moment. His eyes were icy cold as he waited for an explanation. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "Yes, it is me." He cupped his hands together. "Before entering Skyfall Mountain, in order to avoid conflict with the patriarch, I had to hide my identity. I asked that the patriarch doesn't blame me." The patriarch didn't speak. His eyes turned even colder. "Don't blame me?" "Humph humph." Qin Yu said, "Today, I took the initiative to reveal my identity to show my sincerity. So, I asked the patriarch to believe that the grudges of the past are in the past. As for the living, they need to look forward." These words were, of course, false. In truth, the reason was simple. Little Meaty had left, and the little blue lamp had thoroughly hidden itself. Qin Yu could no longer maintain his perfect disguise. Even if he didn't say anything, it would soon be exposed. Thus, taking the initiative to reveal his identity was a decision he had made long ago. Of course, his relationship with that clan wouldn't be discovered because of this. The boundary ring was Little Meaty's trump card. Thinking about it, it was also because of this that she had seized this treasure from Qiongji's hands. The patriarch's tone was icy cold. "How can I believe you? In the past, when the heaven-splitting sword sect suffered a great calamity and was directly destroyed, that was all the work of that clan. The hatred between the two sides could be said to be as deep as the sea. He certainly wouldn't easily believe them." Qin Yu said, "Although the position of heaven-splitting sword sect master is my identity, is not what I ultimately want. What I want is to be like the patriarch, to become a true peak existence between the heavens and earth. If you want the sect master to believe this, the truth is simple. Today, I, Qin Yu, am willing to swear upon the great Tao that I will never pursue the grudges between the heaven-splitting sword sect and that clan in the future. If I violate this oath, the heavens will punish me. This oath was extremely heavy. Moreover, the most important thing was that the patriarch had already confirmed that Qin Yu had obtained the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. In other words, he had the qualifications to make a great Tao oath. Now, the oath had been confirmed. If Qin Yu dared to violate it in the slightest, he would suffer a backlash from the great Tao. The patriarch's complexion relaxed a little. He flicked his sleeves, and the world was instantly isolated. Sect Master Qin, please sit. Qin Yu relaxed. This should be a pass. He had been worried just now that the patriarch would ask him to make an even more serious oath. For instance, if he were to never be enemies with that clan, then there would be no way for the plot to continue. He would have to tear apart all pretense of cordiality and fight to the death. Although this would be delightful, it wouldn't be in line with long-term benefits. What Qin Yu wanted wasn't a moment of pleasure, but to completely uproot that clan. This point hadn't changed at all, just because he discovered the existence of 327. Of course, Qin Yu also had to thoroughly investigate the matter of 327, and the identity of that clan's exalted would clearly help him gain a deeper understanding of the internal situation of that clan. He placed the unconscious 327 in the shade of a tree. The two sat down. The air was silent for a moment. Then, the patriarch slowly said, Sect Master Qin is wise to be able to put down past grudges. Otherwise, in a situation where our clan is facing so many external troubles, we would have definitely acted in order to warn everyone. Destroying the heaven-opening sword sect was a good deterrent. But now, such a thing naturally won't happen again. He looked up, his eyes sharp as if he could see through Qin Yu. However, I would like to know just what Sect Master Qin meant by your words just now. Moreover, if possible, I would also like to know just what happened in the Void Realm. True Sovereign Xiongji's attitude towards you seems unusual. Qin Yu tapped his fingers together. First, I will answer the Patriarch's first question. As I said before, although I obtained the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, there were some problems within that caused me to be unable to rely on it to directly become a true sovereign. And this matter involves 327. That is why I was in such a difficult position and wasn't willing to return her to the Patriarch. He revealed a look of hesitation. Then he bitterly smiled. Since I have come to the everlasting mountain region, I will speak my mind. Before this, I did indeed think of using a loophole in the contract to leave without exposing the fact that it was my sect that obtained the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. I am well aware of the situation of that clan. As an exalted who isn't at the sovereign realm, it is easy for one to die. The Patriarch maintained his composure. I can understand. Qin Yu nodded. But afterwards, before I could leave, I was schemed against by true Sovereign Xiongji and Sage Violet Sky. And this can explain the Patriarch's second question. The reason why true Sovereign Xiongji's attitude towards me is different isn't because I saved him, but because he is under the control of my sect and has no choice but to lower his head. As for the specific reason, it involves the secrets of my sect, so it is inconvenient to tell the Patriarch. A sharp light flashed in the Patriarch's eyes. Before, when Qin Yu admitted that he had obtained the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, he didn't conceal it from Xiongji. Thus, the Patriarch had sensed something strange. To control a true sovereign, he really did have a hidden card in his hands. It was just that he didn't know what degree of control he had. Sect Master Qin, I have heard your answer, but you still haven't told me what you plan to do next. The Patriarch had a calm expression. You are well aware of the situation of my clan. You should understand that we cannot do without an exalted. Qin Yu said, I am willing to become an exalted of that clan, but the Patriarch must also agree to my conditions. Sect Master, please speak. First, I want to unify Swallow Mountain. I want the heaven-splitting sword sect to become the #1 sword sect of the present age and the orthodox inheritance of the sword Tao. Second, I want Niu Dingtian's granddaughter, Niu Daodu. There was nothing he could do. For the sake of the plot, he could only say this. Chapter 1756. The patriarch's heart stirred as he looked at Qinyu. The first thing is not difficult, but the second thing, Niu Dingtian, is not to be trifled with. Qinyu said, I can unify Swallow Mountain by myself, but it will take some time. In other words, the second condition was the main point. The patriarch said, I need an explanation? I don't believe it. Qinyu frowned and said, Niu Daodu is related to the cultivation of our sect's great Tao. I can't tell you more. That was right. Niu Dingtian was in a hurry to cut ties with Qinyu, which was a bit abrupt. But what if he had already sensed Qinyu's desire for Niu Daodu? Everything would be reasonable. As for the truth of Qinyu's desire for Niu Daodu, the patriarch didn't care. Everyone had their own desires. He only needed to ensure that he could protect the interests of the clan. Niu Dingtian and that clan were only separated by a thin layer of window paper. They had not completely fallen out with each other. Since Qinyu stood on the opposite side of Niu Dingtian, there was a solid foundation for cooperation between them. Sect leader Qin, I can agree to your condition. The patriarch said, but what can I get in return? As you said, you can't become a true emperor for the time being. Our clan needs a true emperor to stabilize the situation. Qinyu raised his hand, and the mountain river sword fell into his hand. He raised his hand and slashed at the sky. Rumble, like a clap of thunder, the sealing spell set up by the clan chief was instantly shattered. The sky was split into two. The terrifying sword breath was like a big mouth, destroying everything. Qinyu put away his sword and looked calm. Patriarch, do you think our sect can help you stabilize the situation? Sword cultivators were the most lethal in the world. To them, leaping levels to fight was a very common thing. A half-emperor could fight a true emperor. The patriarch's eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and smiled. Welcome, sect leader Qin. You and I will work together, and we will have a bright future. Clan leader, there is a matter that requires your approval. The 327 involves the great Tao that I have attained. I hope that she can continue to stay by my side for a period of time. The patriarch nodded. Very well. I will have her follow Sovereign Qin to cultivate in the future. Baiji's complexion was ugly. Qinyu. She didn't expect that she would be kept in the dark from the beginning to the end. This showed that in the whole plan, the madam did not see her as a useful pawn. This was the hardest thing for Baiji to accept. But now, she couldn't care less. She asked coldly, Where's madam? Why can't I sense her aura? Qinyu lifted a hand and pressed down. Keep your voice down. Although I've sealed off this place, if that clan finds out, there's a high chance you will die here. Of course, he could escape. Looking at Baiji, who was about to explode, Qinyu secretly shook his head. She was such a beautiful girl, so why did she have to take things too hard? However, he couldn't let her get into trouble now. She's gone. She's gone for a while. Baiji stared at him, motionless. Qinyu said, It's true. Where's madam's home? You can't find it. Baiji wanted to say something else. Qinyu glanced at her. Shua. The air suddenly fell silent. A powerful pressure covered the space around them like an invisible mountain. I know that Baiji has never had a good impression of me. But since you said that you are with me, you better cooperate with me in the future and don't cause any trouble. This is a reminder and a warning. It doesn't matter if you ruin my plan, but if you ruin Little Meat's plan, no one can save you. Baiji's eyes brightened. Is this also part of madam's plan? Qinyu nodded. Baiji said, Good. I won't cause trouble. I will do my best to help madam. There was a trace of excitement in her heart. Finally, I've finally participated in madam's plan. Qinyu waved his hand, sending Baiji away. He rubbed his temples. Indeed, to deal with Baiji, using Little Meat was the best choice. This little hidden danger beside him was temporarily stabilized. Next, he had to investigate what was going on between him and 327. 327. Please instruct me, Patriarch. Starting from today, you will follow Qinyu and monitor his every move. If there is anything wrong, immediately report back to me. Yes. She turned and left. After waking up, 327's face was pale. Her true identity had been exposed, so there was no need to hide it any longer. She changed into a plain dress. Chinyu, 327 bit her lips. The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had already been determined. It was obtained by the heaven-opening sword sect master. But why was it like this? When she was at Skyfall Mountain, she had clearly grasped half of the great Tao and could freely control its power. She took a deep breath and suppressed her tumbling thoughts. Then, she turned and left. Soon, her figure appeared in front of a courtyard within the domain chief manor. She knocked on the door. "Enter," a calm voice sounded out. The door opened by itself. 327 stepped in. The first thing she saw was Chinyu sitting in the courtyard. Her eyes narrowed. She stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, exalted Qin." Chinyu nodded. 327. "The patriarch has already looked for you? Starting from today, you will follow me and cultivate." "Yes. If there is anything you need, you can instruct me," 327 respectfully said. Chinyu said, "There is nothing right now. Once the grand ceremony ends 3 days from now, I will return to Swallow Mountain. Go back and prepare yourself." He couldn't investigate her identity right now. Otherwise, it would easily arouse the vigilance of that clan. 327 bowed and drew back. Chinyu let out a deep breath, his eyebrows furrowing together. This meeting with 327 was a bit different. Perhaps it was because his current boundary had risen, but his perception was much clearer. The relationship between him and 327 seemed to be even deeper than that of a blood relation. Just who was she? On the other side, the retreating 327 couldn't help but reveal a thoughtful expression. Without any reason, she also felt a sense of closeness from Chinyu. Was it because of the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain? 3 days later, that clan held a grand ceremony as scheduled. They officially announced to the outside world that the heaven-opening sword sect master, Chinyu, had become an exalted of the clan. When the news came out, all those paying attention to the Long Mountain region immediately understood that the master of that terrifying sword aura was Chinyu. And the power of that sword was enough to prove everything. The world's first half-emperor realm sword cultivator had been born. The name of the heaven-opening sword sect master, Chinyu, had spread throughout the world in a single day. The impact of this news even surpassed the shock brought by the ownership of the great Tao at Skyfall Mountain. Although there were few true emperors in the world, they were above the clouds. And there was only one half-emperor realm sword cultivator who had crossed the threshold of divinity. He had broken an unsurpassable shackle in front of all sword cultivators in the world. There was now an Emperor Realm sword cultivator among sword cultivators. The world's sword cultivators were in an uproar. Countless great sword cultivators had already set off for Swallow Mountain, requesting an audience with the heaven-opening sword sect master, their attitudes extremely humble. It was at this time that Chinyu bid farewell to that clan. Becoming an exalted of that clan didn't mean that he had to stay here forever. That clan's exalted also had his own secluded cultivation area and did not have to stay in the Long Mountain region. After all, the world was vast and could be reached with a single thought. Distance was no longer a problem for Emperor Realm cultivators. The clan exalted nodded with a smile. Sect Master Qin has returned in glory. This seat has already given orders to fully cooperate with the heaven-opening sword sect and help the sect master achieve his wish as soon as possible and unify Swallow Mountain. "Many thanks, Clan Exalted. Farewell." Chinyu took a step forward, and a towering sword hum suddenly sounded. He swept up 327 and Baiji beside him and shot into the sky. They disappeared in an instant. True Emperor Cheongji was expressionless. "Clan Exalted, this seat does have some connections with Sect Master Qin, but please keep this a secret." The Clan Exalted replied, "Don't worry, this seat will not destroy my own foundation." As a half-emperor realm cultivator, Chinyu was indeed qualified to become an exalted of that clan and help him stabilize the situation. But what if the 13th Tower knew that Qin Yu had secretly controlled true Emperor Qiongji? It was obvious that the 13th Tower would not let this go. This was a huge lightning bolt. With this information in hand, Qin Yu would forever be an exalted of that clan. 300 years? No such thing exists. This was also an important reason why the clan exalted was willing to trust Qin Yu, to give someone a weakness, but what he didn't know was that to Qin Yu, this weakness wasn't anything at all. This was because the 13th Tower, which had a human cultivation system, was Qin Yu's great life and death enemy. Once his identity as Wild Sovereign was exposed, the two sides would fight to the death. And this point in time was less than 30 years. Humph! True Emperor Qiongji understood his meaning. His eyes were icy cold. Patriarch, there are some things that you shouldn't think too highly of. I am not your exalted. Shua! He vanished into thin air. The clan exalted revealed a faint smile. He didn't care at all about being threatened to his face. The more true Emperor Qiongji acted tough, the more panicked he was in his heart. As long as he was controlled by Qin Yu, that clan could benefit from this. Of course, this matter had to be kept secret. He didn't want to withstand the wrath of the 13th Tower. In the midst of the towering sword shadows, Qin Yu suddenly turned his head and looked to the side. In the next moment, true Emperor Qiongji appeared, a smile on his face. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and the sword shadow split into two, sending 327 and Baiji to the other side. On the other side, true Emperor Qiongji stepped in, a bitter smile on his face. Thank you, Sect Master Qin, for saving some face for me. Qin Yu said, True Emperor Qiongji, there is no need to act pitiful in front of me. You and Sage Sky High joined forces to try and kill me. So you only have yourself to blame for your fate today. You shouldn't think that just because you helped me a little that I would let bygones be bygones, right? True Emperor Qiongji's bitter smile instantly vanished. Sect Master Qin is right. If I made a mistake then, I will naturally admit it. But, in the end, I am the true sovereign of the 13th Tower. Once this matter is exposed, the heaven-splitting sword sect will face imminent disaster. So what? These words caused a cold sweat to appear on true Emperor Qiongji's back. Qin Yu had no expression. Since I was able to let go of past grudges and become the exalted of that clan, I will not care about the heaven-splitting sword sect. If worst comes to worst, I'll just change my appearance and live another life. Or perhaps, true monarch Qiongji, do you think that the 13th Tower will accept the allegiance of a new half-monarch realm sword cultivator, or will they insist on avenging the death of a true monarch? True Emperor Qiongji was thoroughly defeated. His face paled. In particular, Qin Yu's last words contained a great killing power. This was because when Qin Yu was able to conceal his identity and enter Skyfall Mountain, that was more than enough to prove his ability to conceal his aura. Not even a true sovereign could discover him. Moreover, now that his strength had risen, his aura-concealing abilities should have also risen. And as long as they could maintain face, the 13th Tower wouldn't mind accepting the world's second half-emperor realm sword cultivator to join them. In fact, both sides could even play out a play. How difficult would it be for the heaven-splitting sword sect Qin Yu to be hunted down by the 13th Tower? True Emperor Qiongji took a deep breath and bitterly smiled. Since Sect Master Qin has seen through everything, I have nothing to say. What do you want to do? But there's one point that I must remind Sect Master Qin. In the end, I'm a true sovereign. If Sect Master Qin thinks that you can play with me in the palm of your hand and send me away as you please, then you are wrong. A true sovereign cannot be easily humiliated. As he spoke these last words, his eyes were firm. This was the final bottom line and pride of a true sovereign. Qin Yu glanced at him. True Emperor Qiongji is worrying too much. My sect does not have such thoughts. You and I can work together for a win-win situation. There is no need for us to mutually destroy each other. He lifted a hand. First, regarding the secrets on my body, I asked true Emperor Qiongji to keep them a secret and not reveal any of them. Second, the boundary ring is in my hands and belongs to the heaven-splitting sword sect. It is impossible for me to return it to the 13th tower. Third, I hope that in the future, I can obtain true Emperor Cheonji's help just once. And I will not have true Emperor do anything that surpasses the limits of your ability. True Emperor Cheonji's eyes brightened. That's it? Qingyu nodded. That's right. As long as true Emperor Cheonji swears upon the great Tao and agrees to my 3 requests, I will also vow that after the agreement is reached, I will remove the hidden dangers in your body and return your freedom. Good. Moments later, both sides made their oaths. True Emperor Cheonji cupped his hands together and bid his farewells. Although matters weren't completely resolved and there were still some loose ends that needed to be cleaned up, this was much better than he had expected. The only headache he had was how to explain the problem with the boundary ring. This treasure was personally bestowed to him by the Tower Master. As true Emperor Cheonji left, Qin Yu's expression was calm. He could feel the strength left behind by the little blue lamp lurking within true Emperor Cheonji's body. But if he didn't have to use the strength, it was best not to. Otherwise, it was likely that he would provide clear coordinates to the fragment holder that was chasing after him and hasten their arrival. That would be a true disaster. An existence on the level of a long-lived species could be seen just by looking at Misty. But the ability that Misty had revealed in front of Qin Yu was likely less than half of her true abilities, or perhaps even less. He couldn't help but be afraid. Thus, Qin Yu would rather loosen the reins and choose a gentler method to stabilize true Emperor Cheonji so that both sides could reach a consensus. Calming his mind, Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and the sword shadows merged back into one. Bai Ji was expressionless. 327 also had a calm expression. Qin Yu swept his eyes over the two. He didn't need to explain anything. Bang! The sword shadows instantly accelerated. On this day, countless cultivators in the central desolate divine continent looked up in amazement. They could clearly see the terrifying sword shadows that pierced through the heavens. A monstrous sword aura fell down, as deep as a prison. Even though they were separated by an immeasurable distance, they still felt their hearts shake with fear. Countless sword cultivators revealed excited expressions. There were even some whose eyes were brimming with tears as they stared at the scene in front of them. In the end, rumors were just rumors. But today, they had finally witnessed with their own eyes the might of an Emperor Realm sword cultivator. We sword cultivators have finally reached the Emperor Realm. Even more people set off towards Swallow Mountain. And sword cultivators were only a portion of them. Sword cultivators could jump realms to fight. A half-Emperor Realm sword cultivator had combat strength comparable to a true Emperor. And the birth of any true Emperor in the world could shake up the distribution of benefits in the world. This was something that even the great Qin Empire would tacitly acknowledge. Chapter 1757. Emperor Realm cultivators deserved such treatment. Moreover, he was the only Emperor Realm sword cultivator in the world. From a certain point of view, he was even more important than ordinary true emperors. It wasn't just because there were many sword cultivators in the great Qin army. They were the sharpest weapons in the country. It was also because the only Emperor Realm sword cultivator in the world represented a possibility and a future. Heaven-splitting sword sex, Qin Yu, had become the standard for all sword cultivators in the world. Xianyang, the capital of the Great Qin. As the imperial tutor walked through the largest and most magnificent imperial palace in the world, all the attendants in the palace bowed and paid their respects to this imperial tutor who was deeply trusted by His Majesty and had a high position of power. They expressed their utmost respect. The imperial advisor is here. The Qin emperor was admiring a painting in the hall. The painting depicted a battlefield between two armies. A sword cultivator was charging at the very front, slashing down in the air. The dazzling sword light almost tore through the paper, its sharp aura rippling through the air. And this was only a small part of the painting. When one looked at the painting, one would find that the characters were alive. They killed the enemy or were killed by the enemy. It was as if they had been frozen in this period of time, repeating it over and over again. The imperial advisor entered the hall and bowed. "Greetings, Your Majesty." He stood up and took a few steps forward. Sword cultivators are an indispensable part of the Qin army. The Qin emperor nodded. The imperial advisor and I share the same opinion. Sword cultivators have unparalleled killing power and are a trump card in hand. But if they are not controlled well, they can hurt themselves. The imperial advisor thought for a moment. "I understand Your Majesty's worries, but I believe that sword cultivators can still be used at the moment. After all, even if they have unparalleled killing power comparable to a true emperor, they are not." The Qin emperor put down the painting and took a sip of tea. "Do you have a plan, imperial advisor?" The imperial advisor bowed. "I'm going to Swallow Mountain again to help Your Majesty." The Qin emperor put down his teacup and smiled. "Very well. Then I'll have to trouble you to make another trip. Tell the heaven-splitting sword sect that if they can help me achieve my wish, the great Qin will not be stingy with their rewards." As the saying went, thunder, rain, and dew were all gifts from the emperor. The imperial advisor naturally understood the Qin emperor's attitude. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I know what to do." Sky Bull City. Niu Tian couldn't help but let out a long sigh after failing to get anything from Niu Daodu again. In his entire lifetime, he could be said to be unparalleled, and he'd charged through countless mountains of blades and seas of flames. He'd killed unparalleled experts, yet he'd never been in such a sorry state like he was now. However, he could only support his own little grandaunt. What else could he do? Don't talk about hitting him. You can try scolding him. Even though he was the old ancestor of the Niu clan, a true emperor, he could casually scold Niu Daodu's father. But Niu Daodu was different, melancholy, but he still had to do what he had to do. "Niu Dingshan, get out here." Schwa, Niu Dingshan, whose arms were big enough to run a horse, trotted over and respectfully bowed. "Old ancestor, please instruct me. Look after Niu Daodu. Don't let her come out on her own. If anything goes wrong, I'll break your legs." Niu Dingshan quickly expressed his stance. He patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, ancestor. Humph, you gave birth to a good daughter." The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Niu Tian slapped the tall and burly man away. Schwa, he vanished from sight. On the other side, Niu Dingshan crawled out from the underbrush. He spat out a mouthful of grass foam, a bitter smile on his face. "Mother asterisk her, wasn't this girl's current temper all because you spoiled her?" "Pa." He lifted his hand and slapped himself in the face. The bitter smile on his face deepened. Since he had cursed the old ancestor, he couldn't save this slap. At this time, Niu Dingshan's complexion changed. "Daodu." He turned and left. He smashed through the door and looked at the empty room, his face paling. This damn girl. She had run away just like that. Moreover, she had used the treasure that the old ancestor had given her. As Niu Dingshan thought of this, he wished he could vomit blood. His hands trembled as he stroked his thighs. He really couldn't keep these two big meat sticks. Swallow Mountain. Several hundred sword sects, large and small, had unanimously decided to establish the Sword Sect Alliance. They had pushed out the heavenly Sword Sect Master Qinyu to become the alliance leader. This was a compromise that they had no other choice. At the very least, they could preserve the name and inheritances of their respective sword sects so that they wouldn't perish. But in truth, all sword cultivators were well aware that the heaven-splitting sword sect had already become the true master of Swallow Mountain. Things were much simpler than they had imagined. There were no waves at all, and everything happened naturally. Qinyu hadn't done anything at all, and yet he had become the true master of the sword path holy land of Swallow Mountain. He was the true #1 swordsman in the world. In the sparsely populated heaven-splitting sword sect, people like Protector Hu Jiming, old sword cultivator Tai Lin, and the one-armed Zhang Xiaoshan felt as if they were in a dream. When a man achieved the Tao, his chickens and dogs also ascended to heaven. These words weren't pleasant to hear, but this was the truth. In particular, Hu Jiming was so excited that his lips were twitching. But in this world, There was no such thing as when the conditions were right, success would follow naturally. Qin Yu was well aware that someone had worked in secret to smooth out this trouble. Only then was the heaven-splitting sword sect able to easily become the master of Swallow Run Mountain. That clan must have worked hard. This could be sensed from the attitude of the South Sea Sword sect. And besides that, the Old Cow's family was definitely helping in secret. And it should be the great Qin Empire. Qin Yu was waiting. He was waiting for someone to come to him on their own initiative. He had already become an exalted of that clan. The game that Misty had prepared could now begin. As for him, he now had the qualifications to place a chess piece in this game. But no matter what, Qin Yu never imagined that the first one to come looking for him would be Niu Daodu. Moreover, she had used a treasure to forcefully pass through space, ignoring the heaven-splitting sword sect's great array formation and directly breaking into the mountain entrance. If it weren't for Qin Yu sensing her aura and promptly withdrawing his sword, it would have been a joke. "Miss Niu, why have you come?" Just as he asked this, Qin Yu couldn't help but reveal an awkward expression. It was because Niu Daodu's expression was far too aggrieved. Her eyes were filled with grief and disbelief as she looked at Qin Yu. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to stand it. Moreover, Qin Yu knew he was in the wrong, and he had no confidence in this little girl. Seeing her tears about to fall, Qin Yu hurriedly said, "I solemnly apologize for what happened at Skyfall Mountain. But that was because I had no other choice. Otherwise, with my status, let alone seizing the great Dao, I would have been killed as soon as I went." Niu Daodu wiped away her tears. "Then you also lied to me. Qin Yu, how good have I been to you? You great liar." This was truly embarrassing because in front of Niu Daodu, the great liar Qin Yu truly lived up to his name. As a man, he had to admit to his mistakes. Qin Yu deeply sighed. "I was wrong. Miss Niu, what must I do in order for you to forgive me? As long as I can do it, I will not decline." "Really?" Looking at Niu Daodu across from him, her eyes instantly brightened. There was no longer any trace of her previous grief. Qin Yu couldn't help but rub his face. He had been too careless. "You are a man. You are the solemn sect master of the heaven-splitting sword sect, the #1 sword cultivator in the world. Qin Yu, are you not going to keep your word?" Qin Yu's lips twitched. "Miss Niu, please speak." Niu Daodu said, "It's very simple. I want to stay in the heaven-splitting sword sect. As long as you agree to this, I can let bygones be bygones." Before Qin Yu could speak, a flustered and exasperated roar exploded in his ears. "Impossible. I will never agree to this." Chua. Niu Dingtian rushed in, his eyes wide. Niu Daodu subconsciously shrank back. Then, she revealed an angry expression. She clenched her teeth and said, "Old ancestor, why are you here? Are you done yet? Can you stop haunting me like a ghost?" Niu Dingtian nearly fainted. He thought, "You smelly girl, don't you know what's good for you? I'm trying to save you. If I let you continue like this, you will lose your little life." His face darkened, and he clenched his teeth. "It looks like your father's legs won't be able to be kept." Niu Daodu said, "You can do whatever you want, but I won't leave." She anxiously stared at Qin Yu. "You said that as long as I make a request, you will do it. Now that I have said it, you can't let the old ancestor take me away." Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He looked at Niu Dingtian. "Senior Niu, how about letting her stay here for 2 days? Don't worry, it will be fine." He said these last words because he had vaguely sensed some of Niu Dingtian's thoughts. It reassured him. After Ruru left, Qin Yu dared to say these words. Otherwise, if Niu Daodu ran over like this, she would definitely suffer a little. Niu Dingtian said, "If Daodu stays here, we won't be able to continue acting." Qin Yu said, "It's fine. Just be careful. Don't let her be discovered." Niu Daodu hurriedly said, "I will be very obedient. I will absolutely not cause trouble. Old ancestor, if you don't agree, I will really be angry. Don't expect me to forgive you so easily." At this moment, Niu Dingtian suddenly frowned. Opposite him, Qin Yu also sensed something. He said to Niu Daodu, "I will send you to a fun place. Go in and stay for a while." With a flick of his sleeves, he sent her into the mystic realm of the sword peak. In the next moment, Qin Yu lifted a hand, and a gap quietly appeared in the heaven-opening sword sect's great protective array. Shua, the imperial scholar, appeared. He cupped his hands together and smiled. Congratulations, Sect Master Qin, for completing an unprecedented undertaking. You have unified Swallow Mountain and become the #1 sword cultivator of the present age. Qin Yu said, "Thank you, Imperial Scholar." He reached out a hand and said, "Imperial Scholar, Senior Neo, since everyone is here, let us sit down and speak." Since everyone was gathered here, they were well aware of each other's thoughts. There was no need to hide anything. As the host and guests sat down, Qin Yu went straight to the point. Swallow Mountain has gone so smoothly. I must thank the two of you for your help. This is a good beginning for our cooperation. The Imperial Scholar said, Sect Master Qin is a straightforward person, and I appreciate that. Then, I will represent Great Qin to express our stance. That clan has existed for a long time. It is time for them to disappear. Neo Dingtian nodded. I share the same stance as the Imperial Scholar. Qin Yu smiled. My status as an exalted is not a problem. Since everyone has the same goal, we can discuss a plan. Chapter 1758. 327 had a complex look in her eyes. She didn't know why she was hesitating at this time. But when she discovered that a true sovereign had arrived at Swallow Mountain and was preparing to report to the Patriarch, she did indeed have such emotions. Monitoring the heaven-splitting sword sects, Qin Yu wasn't just empty talk. To benefit oneself, one must first sharpen one's tools. The Patriarch had given 327 a treasure to rely on. Its function was simple. It could sense powerful auras descending in the surrounding area. Now, there were 3 in Swallow Mountain. 327 took a deep breath and suppressed these emotions that shouldn't have existed. Then, she sent a message to the clan. After doing this, she put away the sensing treasure and returned to her room. For a time, she was lost in thought. During this period of time, she had been at the heaven-splitting sword sect and hadn't had much contact with Qin Yu. But for some unknown reason, in this strange place, 327 felt an unprecedented peace of mind. It was as if this was her home. Was this also the influence of the Great Tao? 327 didn't know, but she began to feel that things weren't so simple. On another side, the Patriarch was in seclusion. When he received 327's message, a sharp light shined in his eyes. 2 mysterious true sovereigns had arrived at Swallow Mountain to visit the heaven-splitting sword sect's Qin Yu. In truth, this wasn't unexpected. After all, he was the only half-sovereign sword cultivator in the world, an existence with killing strength comparable to a true sovereign. To be able to touch upon the circle of true sovereigns was a simple matter. But for 2 true sovereigns to visit on their own initiative, and 2 of them at that, this was strange. In the end, Qin Yu wasn't a true sovereign. The Patriarch couldn't help but frown. At this time, surprise flashed in his eyes. He flipped his hand and took out a messenger object. He probed it with his divine sense. After several breaths of time, he put it away, a thoughtful look on his face. The one sending the message was Qin Yu. The content was as follows. The Imperial Scholar of the Qin Empire and Neo Dingtian have come together to visit the heaven-splitting sword sect. It was brief and didn't explain in detail. But this message in itself represented a kind of attitude. Qin Yu didn't plan on hiding this matter from the Patriarch. The first thought that came to the clan leader's mind was that the 327 had been discovered. But soon he suppressed this thought. This was because what he gave 327 was not an ordinary treasure. Even a true sovereign realm cultivator would not be able to sense its existence. Unless 327 voluntarily confessed, the possibility of being discovered was very small. Soon, the clan leader stood up, his brows unfurrowed. All guesses couldn't compare to seeing it with his own eyes. Schwa, he took a step forward, and his figure instantly disappeared. Heaven-splitting sword sect. Qin Yu glanced at the Imperial Preceptor and Neo Dingtian. He raised his hand and made a gesture. This sect appreciates Lord Imperial Preceptor's good intentions. Although the Heaven-Splitting Sword sect has become the leader of the Sword Cultivator Alliance, this sect has no intention of changing the current situation of sword cultivators. Imperial Preceptor, please report back to His Majesty and explain this to our sect. As for Senior Nyo, I've already said that young Lady Nyo Daodu isn't here. Your actions were inappropriate due to your anxiety, so I won't hold it against you. However, I hope that Senior Nyo can conduct yourself with dignity and not be overbearing. Nation Master didn't say anything. Nyo Ding Tian sneered. Chinyu, let's get straight to the point. Don't be so secretive. I don't know what you want to do, but Nyo Daodu is the future of my Nyo family. If you dare to touch her, I won't let you off. These words were spoken with such sincerity that they simply surpassed the boundaries of acting. Chinyu looked at old Nyo and thought to himself, is this what you're thinking in your heart? Take this chance to remind me. Shua, the patriarch appeared out of thin air, his face expressionless. I want to know just what you plan to do, Nyo Ding Tian. You won't let my clan's exalted rest. He cupped his hands together. Imperial Preceptor, it's been a long time. The Imperial Preceptor smiled and cupped his hands together. When you were at Skyfall Mountain, I was delayed by other matters, so I didn't go and join in on the fun. Patriarch, you are still as elegant as ever. He glanced at Qin Yu from the corner of his eyes, a bright smile on his face. Qin Yu's face stiffened. He stood up and cupped his hands together. Patriarch, why have you come? The Patriarch said, I suddenly thought of something and came to speak with Sect Master. I didn't think I would run into such a lively scene. He smiled and said, I hope Sect Master doesn't blame me for being presumptuous. Qin Yu shook his head. That's fine. Today, the Heaven-Splitting Sword sect is welcoming 3 true sovereigns at the same time. If the 3 of you do not mind, I will immediately order for a banquet to be prepared for the 3 true sovereigns. Nyo Ding Tian snorted angrily and stood up. Forget it. I can't afford to drink the wine of your heaven-splitting swordsmanship sect. Qin Yu, let me warn you again. Stay away from Nyo Daodu in the future. Otherwise, this old man will not be polite. Shua, he left directly, breaking the protective formation of the heaven-splitting swordsmanship sect with a single punch, causing the ringing of swords to resound throughout the entire Yanran Mountain. Countless swordsmen were watching. When the heaven-splitting sword sect had just become the leader of the Swordsman Alliance, Nyo Ding Tian's actions were clearly humiliating the heaven-splitting sword sect. The Imperial Master stood up with a smile. Nyo Ding Tian has always been impatient. Please don't mind him, Sect Master Qin. I will take my leave now. Nodding to the Patriarch, he turned around and followed the gap in the formation that Nyo Ding Tian had broken with his fist. He then left the heaven-splitting sword sect. Humph! Qin Yu's complexion darkened, and a cold light rose in his eyes. I'll let the Patriarch see a joke. Although I am the only sovereign realm sword cultivator in the world, I am still not valued too highly by the true sovereigns. The Patriarch smiled. Sect Master, you think too much. If you didn't value the heaven-splitting sword sect, how could the Imperial Master and Nyo Ding Tian have come to visit? He thought for a moment and said, did the Imperial Master come because of the sword cultivators in the army? Qin Yu nodded. Recently, because of my breakthrough, the sword cultivators of the world have been stirred up and their minds are unstable. The Imperial Master specifically came to remind me that His Majesty Emperor Qin hopes that I can stabilize the hearts of the sword cultivators and not cause unrest in the army. The Patriarch said, we should listen to Emperor Qin's opinion. Qin Yu nodded. Patriarch, rest assured that my sect has no plans to use the sword cultivators of the world to do anything, at least not now. The Patriarch said, it's good that Sect Master understands. What about Nyo Ding Tian? Qin Yu's face darkened. Nyo Daodu ran out again. He couldn't find him, so he ran to my sect to ask for him. He has gone too far. He slammed the armrest of his chair in anger. The Patriarch said, Sect Master really doesn't know where Nyo Daodu is? Qin Yu shook his head. Of course I don't know. Otherwise, why would Patriarch think that Nyo Ding Tian would leave so easily? The Patriarch nodded. That's right. I don't have any other meaning. I just want to remind Sect Master to be careful and not leave any loose ends behind. Chinyu glanced at him. Thank you for the reminder, Patriarch. The Patriarch flipped his hand and took out a piece of jade. This jade pendant has a portion of the world's destiny sealed within it. I came here today to give it to Sect Master. With this jade in hand, although I can't say that you'll be able to turn misfortunes into blessings, you can still make things a bit smoother. Chinyu received the jade pendant, a smile on his face. Thank you, Patriarch. If there is nothing else, then I won't disturb you any longer. Farewell. The Patriarch stood up, cupped his hands together, and left. Chinyu played with the jade pendant in his hand. After carefully sensing it for a long time, he determined that there was nothing wrong with it. It was indeed a jade pendant that had been consecrated. The leader of that race wasn't bragging. As the spirit of fate, the jade pendant that the race gifted was real and could help change one's luck. Of course, the higher an existence's cultivation was, the greater their involvement with the heavens and earth. The more entangled karma there was, the less obvious the effects would be. If he gave this jade pendant to a junior of his sect, they would truly be able to turn misfortunes into blessings. But right now, what Chinyu cared about wasn't this jade pendant. Rather, when he held in his hand, he felt a stirring sensation in his body. It was like a hunter that had been starving for a long time and had finally found a satisfying prey. He couldn't wait to make his move, but now clearly wasn't the time. Suppressing this impulse in his heart, Chinyu flipped his hand and put away the jade pendant. Thinking for a moment, he stepped forwards and appeared outside courtyard 327. He knocked on the door. Soon, 327 opened the door from inside. It walked out and respectfully bowed. Greetings, Sect Master Chin. 327, I want to take a walk through Swallow Mountain. Come with me. The originally nervous 327 couldn't help but look up at him, a strange expression on her face. Chinyu looked at her. Is there something you need? 327 shook her head. No, Chinyu said, then let's go. With a flick of his sleeves, the two of them left Heaven's splitting sword sect and appeared atop a mountain peak. Facing them, strong winds blew against their robes, causing their hair to fly behind them. 327 was a bit nervous. Her first thought was that there was no one here, so no matter what they did, this was a good place. Chinyu held his hands behind his back, not turning his head. There's no need to be nervous. I just wanted to tell you that this mountain is the highest peak of Swallow Mountain, but no sword sect has ever set up their sect here. Do you know why? 327 clearly couldn't keep up with Chinyu's thoughts. She shook her head in a daze. Chinyu glanced at her. In truth, I don't know either. 327. She suddenly felt that the smiling Chinyu in front of her had become unreal. The one and only Emperor Realm sword cultivator in the world, a peak expert who could fight a true emperor, was like this in private. Moreover, even if this was Chinyu's true appearance, why would he reveal it in front of her? It had to be known that she was a member of that clan, and the Patriarch had sent her here. Although it was Chinyu's request, it was impossible for him not to have guessed that she was following him on a monitoring mission. Today, the Patriarch had suddenly arrived. 327 was a little confused. Chinyu lifted a finger. Swallow Mountain is filled with sword sects, but it isn't just about cultivating the sword. There are also many mountain plains and many cities built there. Many people live here. In that direction, there's an eastern sword city. It's very big, and it's one of the most bustling places in Yanran Mountain. Let's go there today. 327 couldn't help but ask, hasn't Sect Master Chin been in seclusion recently? Chinyu smiled. There is a limit to the road of cultivation. I don't need to say this, right? What's more, sometimes it's better to stay close to life and relax for a while. Sometimes it's better to cultivate. Without giving 327 a chance to ask any more questions, Chinyu took a step forward and turned into a sword shadow, whistling away. However, this time, he had clearly restrained his aura and didn't reveal the sword aura pressure that an Emperor Realm sword cultivator should have. 327 could only follow behind, looking at the back of the figure in front of her with a puzzled expression. An hour later, Eastern Sword City came into view. Chinyu landed and turned around, saying, "Let's walk there." 327 nodded. She had already thought it through. As long as she stayed by Chinyu's side and knew his whereabouts, everything else wasn't important. Eastern Sword City's name was prefixed with the word sword, and it was a symbol of status in itself. Rumor has it that tens of thousands of years ago, a powerful sword cultivator appeared in this city. He was known as the enlightened master of the Eastern Sword, and his sword Dao was exceedingly high. After his death, he fell here and left behind a sword Dao inheritance. Whoever can obtain it will have great luck, and their future achievements will be limitless. At the city gate, an old man's spittle flew in all directions as he spoke, his hands dancing in joy. From the looks of it, he seemed to have seen it with his own eyes. The inheritance left behind by the enlightened master of the Eastern Sword was definitely in Eastern Sword City. A group of people surrounded him, and a few youngsters laughed and teased him from time to time. "Old Dong, you're bragging again. The enlightened master of the Eastern Sword has a bloodline descended. So how can he leave his sword Dao inheritance to us?" That's right. You old man, you tricked us like this back then, causing me to wander around the city for a few days. Who said it wasn't? Old Dong still owes me a drink even now. I must have been blind to have been tricked by him into paying the bill. Old Dong's face flushed red after being exposed. Shoo, shoo, shoo. A bunch of little bastards who can't appreciate my kindness. The opportunity is right in front of you, but you don't know how to cherish it. That's your own problem. Another round of jeering. Old Dong is angry out of humiliation. Let's go. Let's not argue with him. The city gates are open. Today, I'm going to the Eastern Gate Sword Gym to listen to a lecture. I heard that the lecturer today is a ruler realm sword cultivator. Stop bragging. How can you believe the words of the Eastern Gate Sword Gym? A ruler realm sword cultivator? It's already good enough if there's a Saint Realm sword cultivator. Chinyu stood in the crowd and glanced at Old Dong, who was babbling and had a face full of indignation. Let's go. He brought 327 with him and followed the crowd into the city. At this moment, Chinyu frowned slightly. Bang! A few youngsters near 327 cried out in pain as they bumped into each other, rolling on the ground like gourds. The most unlucky one had his face stuck to the ground, and 2 of his front teeth were knocked out. He covered his mouth and wailed. 327's gaze fell on Chinyu's back. Her lips moved, but she didn't say anything. After entering the city gates and heading east, there was a garden full of green vegetables. This wasn't a jingle, but Eastern Sword City's Eastern Main Street was really selling all kinds of spirit herbs. Sword cultivators cultivated the way of the sword, and they had very high requirements for their bodies. Otherwise, if they weren't careful, they might be devoured by their own sword aura. Some of the more powerful sword techniques even had extremely strict requirements for the physical body. Therefore, all kinds of spirit herbs that could nourish the body had always been extremely popular in Swallow Ran Mountain. The various spirit seed sects had a very good impression of Swallow Ran Mountain sword cultivators. Each and every one of them was a good customer. They were in high demand and sold well. Every year, they made a lot of money. Although they said they had become spirits, they were actually more intelligent. Chinyu even saw a white radish desperately trying to escape from the bamboo basket. Unfortunately, there was a restriction placed on the bamboo basket. If it ran to the mouth of the basket, it would be knocked down. It was obvious that this was 327's first time seeing it. She stared with wide eyes, entranced. Chinyu walked over and pointed. "How much is the radish?" Soon, he walked back and threw the radish to 327, who was at a loss. "This is for you. Consider it as thanks for agreeing to accompany me for a walk today." Reality proved that just buying radishes wasn't enough. There were also oranges, beans, and melons. But 327's favorite food was candied hawthorn. The immortal craftsmanship was exquisite and it tasted wonderful. When she bit into it, the sweet and sour mixed together perfectly. Chinyu nodded as he ate. 327 ate 3 skewers in a single go. Her face flushed red, and she earnestly waved her hand to indicate that she was full. Chinyu smiled and nodded. He bought several more skewers and held them in his hands. The candied hawthorn vendor was all smiles. "Dear customer, you are far too good to this little sister. Since you bought too much, I will give you a free skewer. Come back after you finish eating." Chinyu paused. He looked at 327. "Do the two of us look alike?" The vendor said, "You don't look alike, but your temperaments are similar. I can tell that you're close. Aren't the two of you brother and sister? If so, then I must say that I spoke too much. I hope dear customer doesn't take offense." Chinyu smiled and turned to leave. 327 also heard the vendor's words. She frowned. Although this person's craftsmanship was good, he had poor eyesight. She was a member of that tribe. The number of people in that tribe was fixed. Since a long time ago, it had never increased or decreased. Brother and sister? He actually dared to say that. Chapter 1759. The facts proved that 3,327 who said she was full after eating 3 skewers was indeed lying. This was because most of the candied haws Chinyu bought later had entered her stomach. Although Chinyu didn't reveal any emotions at all, 327, who was walking behind him, was still annoyed. Just what was wrong with him? She had actually revealed this appearance in front of Chinyu. As she stared at Chinyu's back, 3,327 subconsciously bit her lips, a bit absent-minded for a time. Bang! She bumped into Chinyu's back. "Ah, Secmaster Chin, I'm really sorry. I didn't pay attention just now." 3,327 waved her hands. Her face flushed red. Chinyu turned and smiled. "It's just a bump, it's fine." He patted his stomach. "I'm a bit hungry. Let's go eat." He chose a position with a good view and had the waiter serve several of his specialty dishes. Chinyu gestured with his hand. "What are you standing for? Sit." 3327 hesitated for a moment and then sat across from him. The restaurant served dishes very quickly. Not long after the two sat down, the hot and cold dishes had all been served. According to the waiter's recommendation, they bought a special wine from Eastern Sword City. As for the taste, it was just so. After drinking 2 mouthfuls, Chinyu picked up his chopsticks and picked up some food. "Come eat." 3327 couldn't understand Chinyu's thoughts. Her originally calm heart couldn't help but feel apprehensive. This was because Chinyu's performance today was too strange. He had pulled her out to relax, and even ran into a restaurant to eat. Was he here specifically to enjoy the pleasure of eating fish and dragons? Or did he have some other purpose? Looking at Chinyu calmly eating and drinking across from her, 3327 felt that this was not the first reason. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. She felt a bit panicked. Before leaving Long Mountain region, the elder had found her in private and told her some things. 3327 originally thought that the elder was overthinking things. After all, he was a dignified Emperor Realm sword cultivator, a powerful existence that stood at the peak of the world. How could he have the mind to pay attention to matters between men and women? But today's events were hard to explain. Could it be that the elder was right? As she thought of this, 3,327 became increasingly uneasy. Chinyu could sense the discomfort she revealed. He laid down his chopsticks and said, "The reason I brought you out today is purely because I want to go out for a stroll. Don't think too much about it." 327 felt a little more at ease, but he still shook his head. She certainly couldn't admit that she already viewed him as a pervert in her heart. Chinyu said, 327, for a period of time from now on, you will be following me. Do you mind if I temporarily give you a name? After all, it feels a little weird to call you that. 327 hesitated for a moment before saying, "Sure, then I'll call you Little Seven." Chinyu faintly smiled. "My sect comes from the Western Desolate, so I'm not too clear about the internal affairs of the Central Desolate Divine Continent. For instance, that clan. Miss Shaoqi, can you tell me something about your tribe? Of course, I'll only tell you the basics. If it involves secrets, feel free to hide them." 327 glanced at Chinyu. His expression was calm. He rapped the table. Right now, I am exalted of that clan. If I want to understand you, that shouldn't be too much, right? Miss Shao Qi, even if the patriarch were here, I could still ask you this question. Sect Master Qin is right. 327 thought for a moment. But I don't know what Sect Master wants to know. Qin, you said, that's simple. Miss Shao Qi, you can start from the matters around you. Just say whatever you think of. He smiled. I'm curious. Just who were your parents that they could give birth to such a beautiful girl like you? 327's eyes darkened. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, my parents died when I was young. I didn't live to see the day when my clan was immortal. Qin, you said, I'm sorry, I've touched upon something that hurts you. 327 shook his head. Sect Master Qin should know the situation of my clan. Even if my parents were still alive, they still might not remember me. There was a vacant look in her eyes. This is because my memories of the past are already very blurry. I can only remember a vague outline. The people of that clan were nameless and didn't exist in the samsara of the heavens and earth. They were nearly immortal and indestructible. But once they were severely wounded and revived, what came back to life was only their mortal body and bloodline. Their consciousness had already been annihilated. This was the same as giving birth to a brand new consciousness within their mortal body. They seemed alive, but they were also dead. Without a doubt, 327 had encountered this sort of situation before. Qin, you said, besides your parents, does Miss Shao Qi have any other relatives? 327 shook his head. I'm an orphan girl. She subconsciously furrowed her eyebrows. Qin Yu immediately changed the topic. He asked her a few more questions about that clan. At the same time, he asked some questions about 327. At the very least, he had a rough idea of what was going on. Only then would he be able to make targeted preparations for his investigation. He didn't eat much and drank a great deal of wine. Most of it entered his stomach. Have you eaten? Come, let's take a stroll around Eastern Sword City. There are many fun places to visit. Just as he was about to pay the bill, he heard a sound coming from upstairs. Bang! The window was smashed apart. A young sword cultivator was struck down and spat out a mouthful of blood. Xiong Qing. With a cry of alarm, a female cultivator flew over from the street and landed beside this person. How are you? The young man called Xiong Qing squeezed out a smile. Rongjiang, why are you here? I'm fine. Just as he finished speaking, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Don't speak. Eat this pill and hurry up and heal yourself. A group of youths stood in front of the broken window. One of them sneered, hold on. Rongjiang, that pill in your hand is something our Eastern Sword sect gives to our disciples to heal themselves. How can you give it to an outsider? Xiong Qing wiped the corner of his mouth and shook his head. I'm fine, really. Rongjiang put away the pill. Rongjiang clenched her teeth. I'm fine. If I tell you to eat it, then eat it. I will deal with it myself. Humph. Rongjiang, do you think your father is still an elder? Let me tell you, the current Swallow Mountain has changed. You can give this pill to him, but if Xiong Qing dares to eat it, I will beat him until he spits it out. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. The youths by the window roared with laughter. Qin Yu frowned slightly. Across from him, 327 said, Sect Master Qin, do you know this woman? Qin Yu nodded. We met once, not really. When he first came to Swallow Mountain, he had helped a poor old sword cultivator fulfill his wish to enter Skyfall Mountain. Rongjiang was the female sword cultivator responsible for collecting immortal money outside the mountain gate. Even though he had only met her once, he could tell that she had a good temperament. Moreover, why did today's matter seem to be related to the heaven-splitting sword sect? Otherwise, where did the so-called Swallow Mountain change come from? Because now, he was the sky of Swallow Mountain. At this moment, a lazy, charming voice suddenly appeared in his mind. Little Qin, you're in luck. Eastern Sword City does have some good stuff. As long as you bring it to me, I'll play with you for a day. What do you think? It was the big white goose. TSK, Little Qin, you are quite bold. Little Meaty has already left, and you still dare to call me by my nickname. Or, are you already impatient? You are so bad. As long as you help me obtain what is hidden in Eastern Sword City, I will let you know just where the name Big White Goose came from. Qingyu remained calm. With a thought, the blue sun and purple moon in his soul space sped up, opening up the sun and moon force field. Cough, it's big sister Fei Fei. Before little Meaty left, she specifically told me to take care of her while she was gone. She said that she had some matters to attend to and that she would thank you when she returns. Bai Fei Fei sneered. Boy, stop trying to scare me. Little Meaty doesn't even know that I can still wake up. Mmph, I am no longer a perfect long-lived species. My various abilities have been greatly reduced. Although I am still in a sealed state, in terms of life, I am still perfect. So, you had best cooperate with me. Otherwise, if I am not satisfied, you will suffer. Qin Yu's heart sank. Indeed, these beautiful existences with sweet voices were all old monsters that had lived for countless years. They were not easy to scare. What should he do? If he was threatened by Fei Fei today, then Qin Yu's situation would be far from good. Perhaps he would be controlled by her, and even become a puppet that had no choice but to obey her orders. Qin Yu took a deep breath and clenched his teeth. Bai Fei Fei, you dare to touch me? Little thing, you are courting death. The blood vessels in Qin Yu's left hand swelled up like a fierce worm about to drill out from his flesh. 327 instantly sensed something. He frowned. Sectmaster Qin? Qin Yu shook his head. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. He looked down at his left hand, his eyes icy cold. Bai Fei Fei, if you really had a method to deal with me, you wouldn't have chosen to discuss it with me. The first thing you would have done would have been to directly swallow me up. So stop bluffing. Otherwise, I guarantee that I will tell Little Meat everything that happened today. Once she returns, you will definitely feel very uncomfortable. His left hand still had a fierce appearance. It trembled like a wild beast, ready to eat someone at any moment. Qin, you could clearly feel the rage and suppression in Bai Fei Fei's heart at this time. Humph! You smelly brat, you've got guts. Bai Fei Fei coldly snorted, changing her tone. Then, let's make a deal. You help me obtain what is hidden in Eastern Sword City, and I promise you that I will obediently sleep in the future and will never make things difficult for you again. Qin Yu's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. He clenched his teeth and said, Swear it. Bai Fei Fei angrily roared. Qin Yu, don't go too far. Fine, I can swear that if I violate it, the great Tao will collapse. Qin Yu said, Deal. Shua. The strange appearance of his left hand instantly disappeared. Little Qin, big sister will wait for your good news. Mwahaha. She blew him a kiss and then vanished. Ha, woman. Qin Yu clenched his fists. He looked up at 327 and said, It's just a small problem. It's fine now. 327 hesitated for a moment and then nodded, not speaking. And after Bai Fei Fei's sudden disturbance, the situation on the street had changed once more. The young man by the window blocked Jiang Rong's path, a sneer on his face. I said that Xiong Qing can't go anywhere today. Since he invited us to drink, how can we not let our guests drink to their heart's content? That's right. That's the reason. Xiong Qing, you're the one who doesn't know how to speak. You've offended Brother Jiangda. Hurry up and kowtow to apologize. What kind of man are you to hide behind a woman? Moreover, are you sure that Miss Jiang Rong can protect you right now? Don't provoke trouble for her. Xiong Qing struggled to stand up. Jiang Rong, you can leave. I'm really fine. He clenched his teeth. Jiangda, I was wrong before. I offended you with my words, but I've already paid the price. Let her go. Jiangda said, You privately gave a sect pill to an outsider and violated the rules of the sect. Jiang Rong, even if you were my cousin, there is no way to let this matter rest. Now, even if you want to leave, it's too late. He took a step back. Men, take Jiang Rong and bring her back to the sect to be dealt with. Shua, shua. With the sound of breaking air, several black-clothed sword cultivators appeared on the long street. The one leading them had an expressionless face, his eyes cold. Jiang Rong, don't put up any meaningless resistance. Come back with us. Xiong Qing's complexion changed. She quickly raised her hand. The pill is here. I will immediately return it. The black-clothed sword cultivator frowned. Jiang sneered. What are you waiting for? The leader waved his hand. Take her. Little Qin, there are clues on this woman. Hurry up and bring her back. Bai Feifei's excited voice suddenly sounded out. Qin Yu's eyes sharpened. He stood up and said to 327, Miss 7, wait here for a moment. Shua. Qin Yu directly appeared in front of Jiang Rong, shielding her behind him. The black-clothed sword cultivator that rushed over had an icy look in his eyes. The Eastern Sword Sect is handling matters. Unrelated people, please leave. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. With several dull bangs, the several people that rushed over were sent flying away at even faster speed. They tumbled to the ground. Whoosh, on a long street. Everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. In Eastern Sword City, there was actually someone that dared to attack a sword cultivator from the Eastern Sword Sect. Although the current Eastern Sword Sect was no longer as extravagant as its ancestors, it was still one of Swallow Mountain's 10 sword sects. As the saying went, a starving camel was still larger than a horse. Its background could not be underestimated. Moreover, everyone knew that the Eastern Sword Sect was a vassal sect of the Heaven-Opening Sword Sect. Although this relationship had been severed when the Heaven-Opening Sword Sect was destroyed, it was said that during this period of time, the Eastern Sword Sect had used some unknown method to reconnect the two sides and restore their vassal relationship. As for the Heaven-Opening Sword Sect, there was no need to mention its current status in Swallow Mountain. Looking at Qin Yu, everyone present had the same thought pop up in their hearts. This person was definitely going to be in deep trouble. Jiang took a step back. He said in a low voice, Who are you? Why are you interfering in the internal affairs of my Eastern Sword Sect? As he spoke, he winked at his companion. Seeing that he had already sent a message, he immediately calmed down. Qin Yu ignored him. He turned and cupped his hands together. Miss Jiang Rong, do you still remember me? Jiang Rong revealed a puzzled expression. She thought for a moment before remembering. It's you. She bit her lips. Fellow Taoist, I appreciate your good intentions, but you should hurry up and leave. Humph. You injured someone from my Eastern Sword Sect, and you still want to leave? Whoosh. With the sound of breaking air, a middle-aged sword cultivator appeared above them, a powerful sword aura surging around him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.